Yeah, break it down. What? Yeah, yeah. It is snowing. It is snowing. It is snowing like mad. It's snowing like mad, man. Oh, guys. I have been going through like a midlife crisis, dude. No two ways about it. I feel like I've just been alienating people around me. I feel like I've just been like a total dipshit. Turning 40 is tough. Turning 40 is tough. But I learned a lesson recently is I've always been a writer, even when I was little, and I really realized like the last 6 months I haven't really been doing anything writing wise. Maybe even longer than that. I haven't been doing anything writing wise. Haven't been doing anything, and I feel like I'm of the mind and of the brain that if I don't create drama on a page, then I begin to create drama in my life. And I think that that's more or less what has happened to me. And so that's rededicated me back to writing. Good to see you, good to see you, good to see you, Compton. Hiss. Compton with the hiss. Today we are going to be doing Major. Really wonderful to see you, Major. Today we're going to be doing a really Ukraine heavy episode. I think I don't get to do Ukraine over the week. Segatari, good to see you. I don't get to do Ukraine over the week because it kills the TikTok stream if I talk about Ukraine. It's really, really obvious that the algorithm is just will kill you if you talk about Ukraine. Like, it'll just kill you. I've literally seen it go from like 300 to like 5 people in the space of like 10 minutes. Like, it's pretty stunning. Pretty stunning how fast it can happen. Staz, good to see you. Good evening to you. So, get settled in. Get nice and cozy. Get your tea. If you're listening at work, right? Get in. Get dug in. Matthew, good to see you, bud. I really like that this is turning into a place where you guys trust to come to me to deliver this information, right? I really value it. I can't even begin to tell you how much I value it, that we all just come together. And it's all predicated on the idea that I'm going to show you a bunch of stuff that you're going to go, yeah, that's not bullshit. I was thinking about this. I was thinking about this because I listened to this today. This is the War in Ukraine 1 year on from the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Hey, Doom to Bloom, good to see you, bud. And this made me want to pull my teeth out while I was listening to it. It is essentially 3 yes men, moderated by an even bigger yes man, talking about Ukraine and being, the only word I can use to describe it is intentionally stupid. Anemone, Command Genius, good to see you guys. Intentionally stupid would be the word that I would use to describe what I listened to. Thankfully, I was like playing some Diablo 2 while I was listening to it, so I could take all my frustrations out on little monsters on the screen, which was very nice. That was very nice. But like, if this is the central propaganda narrative that's coming out of the West, it is simultaneously terrifying and pathetic. It's terrifyingly pathetic that they refuse to acknowledge their own actions on the lead up to the war. They, at no point do they talk about NATO encroachment. They don't even bring up the question of NATO encroachment. At no point do they talk about the United States actions within Ukraine on the lead up to the war. At no point do they talk about the coup, obviously. At no point are they talking about any of these things that I think are central to the piece. Nova Scotia, good to see you. And everything was just about how Putin is a madman, essentially. That's their essential narrative. And the reason why it becomes extremely terrifying is that it is here. It is here in this conference here with CSIS that for the first time I have heard a group of American intellectuals actually refer to this conflict openly as a proxy war, Russia versus the West. That they didn't say it, but I can say it, that here is a very clear moment that we can all point to say this is when World War III was actually officially declared. That up until this moment, no one said so clearly, with such clarity, on such a stage, that that it is the West versus Russia, they say, but the implication, of course, is Russia and her allies. And in this particular case, Russia's allies is actually everybody else. That Russian allies include places like China and India, South America, that we are actually looking at, for real, a build-up to World War III, and that the people who are in power are so arrogant and stupid that they actually think that this is a good idea. That this really, like, it's incredible how stupid these people are. And what I think is so alarming is that they're so stupid that they think we're stupid enough to go along with how stupid they are. And they actually think that they are just going to be able to bluff through the overt, obvious, and total bullshit that they are putting in front of the rest of the world. So, right away, the idea that America is at all interested in a path for peace or any of that kind of stuff is a total joke. From the Global Times, right? China urges Russia-Ukraine ceasefire. Offers path to peace in proposition paper or in position paper. Shows sincerity in global governance. They have China's position on the political settlement of the Ukraine crisis. Number 1, respecting the sovereignty of all countries. Number 2, abandoning the Cold War mentality. 3, ceasing hostilities. 4, resuming peace talks. 5, resolving the humanitarian crisis. 6, protecting civilians and prisoners of war. 7, keeping nuclear power plants safe. 8, reducing strategic risks. 9, facilitating grain exports. 10, stopping unilateral sanctions. 11, keeping industrial and supply chains stable. And 12, promoting post-conflict reconstruction. This, of course, was completely rejected by the US and the EU, who came together and then started sanctioning more Chinese firms. That what we are looking at is the self-isolation of the West, as essentially stated by these people at this organization, that quote-unquote the West is isolating itself into a position of what it considers to be supremacy. And it is going to make this a long-lasting, drawn-out conflict, as long as it possibly can. And we are also now seeing, good to see you, Eric, we're also seeing the United States making very foolish decisions in regards to China. From Reuters, China says U.S. endangered peace with Taiwan Strait fly-through. America also recently sent 400 troops, 400 soldiers to Taiwan. A clear provocation. Yeah, China accused the United States of endangering peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait after a U.S. military plane flew over the sensitive waterway on Monday, with the U.S. Navy responding that it had been in international airspace. Yes, of course. Everything's international airspace if you're Nazis in the world stage, right? Everything is international airspace. So the big thing that I want to jump to right away is this article here written by Rainer Shea. I recently had the pleasure to contact Rainer and let him know that I've been reading his work on my stream, and asked if there was anything I could do to help promote him. And so I think I'm going... he seemed just quite happy that somebody was enjoying his work, and seemed very lovely. And so I'm going to make a larger effort to actually say Rainer Shea can be found at rainershea.substack.com. He has a lot of writing there, and it's all extremely high-quality work. Please, if you're a Substack reader, or if you're looking for someone to read, consider Rainer Shea. I find his work to be very well researched, and not coincidentally, in line with my own view of how things go. I wish that I could write so eloquently. So today I have the absolute pleasure of reading "The Ukraine PSYOP is being destroyed, placing the war machine in unprecedented peril." The Ukraine PSYOP, like happens at some point to all imperialist PSYOPs, has reached the state where its foundational myths are getting broken down, where the category of individuals who disbelieve it includes not only the anti-imperialist-minded ones who were standing against it from the start, but also mainstream society. This happened to the Iraq PSYOP, when it was shown that subduing Iraq would be a long-term task. Then the Downing Street memo revealed the WMD story to be a lie. This happened to the Syria PSYOP, when WikiLeaks showed there had been a cover-up of the evidence proving Assad's innocence on the gas attack accusations. It's these kinds of events that force imperialism's narrative managers to at least partially give up on a propaganda narrative. Even though these managers are always going to try to argue against the evidence disproving the narrative, as they've done by attempting to discredit the WikiLeaks revelation, or by arguing Bush didn't lie but was misled, in the long term they have no choice but to stop relying on it as a narrative asset. It's at that point too easy for their stance to be rebutted, and they must switch to a new war narrative. This is what's happening with Ukraine. During the last month, appropriately the same one in which the war started a year ago, several things have happened which represent irreversible changes in the way the Ukraine conflict is thought about. First, Seymour Hersh put out his findings, which conclusively prove what everybody who's been paying attention always suspected, that the USA blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. The attempts to discredit his report follow in the same pattern as the arguments that WikiLeaks didn't disprove the Syria narrative, because they both give the benefit of the doubt to sources which have shown themselves utterly untrustworthy. Anti-imperialist commentator Peter Schwartz observes about these reactions to Hersh, and why they're not coming from a place of honest, critical vigor. One of the main accusations against Hersh was that he relied on a single source in the U.S. security apparatus, whose identity he is keeping secret for security reasons, whereas journalistic due diligence requires at least two sources. In fact, one of Hersh's primary sources is the President's threat and Deputy Secretary of State Victoria Nuland, who made similar comments. After the attack, she exulted that she was pleased Nord Stream 2 is now, as they say, a pile of junk at the bottom of the ocean. Knowledge of U.S. responsibility for the attack was widespread. Hersh told the Berliner Zeitung, "The people in America and Europe who build pipelines know what happened. The people who own companies that build pipelines know the story." He said he didn't hear it from them, but he quickly learned that they knew. That Washington had planned and executed the attack is the only plausible explanation for the destruction of Nord Stream. Hersh has provided ample circumstantial evidence and facts to support this. The claims spread after the attack that Russia had destroyed the pipeline itself is so absurd that it was quickly dropped. Even Attorney General Frank had publicly confirmed that there is no evidence for this. With there being no truly compelling argument against the evidence that Washington was behind the explosion, unless one has a pre-existing motive to want it to not be true, the media has mainly decided to omit reporting on Hersh's statements, but this hasn't been able to prevent a rise in public awareness of the anti-imperialist arguments about Ukraine, because this week the Rage Against the War Machine rally forced the Ukraine debate back into our discourse. By gaining coverage from the big networks, it introduced the general population to anti-imperialist ideas, provoking the PSYOP machine into attacking America's internal revolutionary movement. COINTELPRO rallied its traditional radical liberal agents to direct vitriol towards the rally, claiming it aided reactionary politics because it was led by the Libertarian Party. If these critics were coming from a place of anti-imperialism, they wouldn't have been denouncing Rage Against the War Machine in the first place, as they would see it's their responsibility to build the anti-war movement's left flank. But they don't support the goal of ending U.S. hegemony in the first place, so they've been glad to amplify the smear campaign against the rally. The fact that this debate over the rally continues to be a sore point for the online left shows it did serious damage towards imperialism's narrative control, or else the imperial-aligned left wouldn't be so passionate about discrediting the rally's legacy. Along with this raising of anti-imperialist consciousness in the core has come an affirmation from China of Rage Against the War Machine's core argument, that it was the U.S. which provoked the conflict. Ambassador Zhang Hanhui has said that as the initiator and main instigator of the Ukrainian crisis, Washington, while imposing unprecedented comprehensive sanctions on Russia, continues to supply arms and military equipment to Ukraine. The only reason China's officials haven't outright endorsed Russia's intervention, like the DPRK have, is because the PRC is diplomatically invested in too much of the globe to be acting that controversially. It's apparent to every Marxist who's seriously studied the conflict that Russia was justified in taking action against fascist Ukraine. Kiev's violations of ceasefires during the days leading up to Russia's action, in which the Ukrainian shelling of the Donbass increased by 400%, alone vindicate the project to demilitarize Ukraine. Those who are committed to the pro-imperialist ideology will never take the perspectives of the PRC and the DPRK seriously. But thanks to Hersh and Rage Against the War Machine, the amount of minds who may be receptive to such ideas has been growing, which is what's created better conditions for the proliferation of the additional anti-imperialist ideas that the PRC has recently put forth. Those ideas, articulated in the Chinese report titled U.S. Hegemony and Its Perils, are summarized by the report's texts as follows. They describe the global evils that Washington carries out: political hegemony, throwing its weight around; military hegemony, wanton use of force; economic hegemony, looting and exploitation; technological hegemony, monopoly and suppression; and cultural hegemony, spreading false narratives. For those who are regulars on the show, you'll recall that I read this piece aloud. Everyone who's studied U.S. imperialism already knows the things the report details. The report is necessary because it's a tool to bring such an education to those who haven't yet gained this knowledge. The American media won't publicize it, but in the long term, it and other anti-imperialist sources like it can succeed at changing America's consciousness. This is because we've reached a stage in history's progression where the means which the U.S. empire has historically used to control the narrative are becoming no longer effective. To sell its false narratives, America has to first sell the idea that it's the greatest country on earth, the leader of the free world, the central promoter of human rights and democracy. The Ukraine proxy war's failure has made the sustenance of this foundational myth untenable. The Afghanistan and Iraq invasions have already done grievous damage to the myth. Then Washington's Ukraine miscalculation made this decline truly irrecoverable. Washington's war of terror discredited the USA in the mind of most of the globe, making it unable to sway key countries in the geopolitical power struggle. Ukraine affirmed this shift by prompting virtually all countries, aside from the imperialist ones, to reject Washington's call to participate in the sanctions. Washington's investment in aiding Nazi terrorists and a highly corrupt Ukrainian government that's increasingly anti-democratic has created a further narrative liability. The world overall sees that Washington is no longer defender of sovereignty or freedom, but a hypocritical actor whose true goal is to advance the geopolitical interests of its ruling oligarchs. The Ukraine PSYOP isn't capable of intellectually countering this, not enough to convince the majority of the globe's people to support the proxy war. The more this global anti-imperialist consciousness bleeds into the core, a process that players like China are working to help along with, the closer the core gets to revolution. That's a good piece. That's a good piece. What I admire about Rainer Shea is his optimism. I admire his optimism in the face of all of it. That it is a strange and unusual time that we find ourselves in. Ugh. What do you say? Laybach has an album called NATO with a version of Final Countdown. It's interesting. Okay. Eric says, this reminds me of what I recently learned about the Cuban Missile Crisis, where the U.S. flew over Cuban airspace, yeah, and the Liberal made it sound like that Castro was pissed off for not wanting the U.S. military airplane flying over its territory. I mean, yeah, I suspect that Castro was pissed off, right? Yeah, there's no international airspace between China and its island. Yeah, at least I can't find a map that shows it exactly. Rax, good to see you, bud. What's my opinion about Vladimir Putin and Russia in general? Also, what do you think about the West supporting Ukraine with weapons? That was my question last time, but I couldn't answer it because of the shadow ban by TikTok. And here you've come, Rax. Excellent. Okay, Rax, I'm going to give you the whole story. Thanks for coming by, bud. I really appreciate that, actually. That's really kind of you. So, first of all, I think Russia is a beautiful country. I think the Russian people are beautiful people. If you want to see a really beautiful movie about the trauma of World War II, a beautiful but harrowing movie, certainly, you want to see Come and See. It's a movie that was produced in Russia. Remembering, of course, that Russia doesn't have the same kind of Hollywood sort of level of production that America has. But it really tells a very personal and beautiful story of a boy's experience, a literal child's experience of going to war against the Nazis. And it really, the final point of the film really does seem to be that the Russians were forced to do horrible and grotesque things in the defense of their country, but they never lost their soul. That I think is the real message that came out of that movie. That the director continuously brings the characters to a moment of, are you going to be as bad as the Nazis, right? That, are you going to torture these people? Are you going to go to that kind of level? And the answer was always no. That they always were brought to the brink but never crossed it. And I mean, it's one of those films that is really, really brilliant to watch, because it really reminds you and it really tells you and it really shows you that these sorts of events leave traumatic marks. There was someone in here maybe last time or the time before who was saying, like, whatever, it was so long ago, who cares? It's such a childish perspective. You don't experience something like World War II and not have it leave a cultural trauma. That is something that the people of Russia the invasion of the Nazis, the murder of over 20 million of their people in the defense of their country against the Nazis. That's something those people are going to bear for generations yet to come. And it's from that position that I think you have to begin when you are talking about modern day Russia. That you are dealing with a people who are proud, they are strong, they believe in the power of their collective cooperation. They're not officially communists any longer, but the spirit of communism still lives within Russia. When Putin invaded and the sanctions came, the people of Russia seem to have gone along, more than gone along. They seem to have proudly supported this idea that my position on Putin is that he began as, if it was up to Putin, he would be in NATO. If it was up to Putin, he would have continued the project. That post-Stalin, the project very clearly seems to be a pivot away from communism as a organizational idea, away from Marxism, and back towards laissez-faire capitalism, largely because of this post-World War II trauma. That I think that communism as an idea, and certainly Stalin as a leader, was no longer pursuing larger projects. That the project in Stalin's, the end of his life, was reconstruction. And that the people of Russia were focused on reconstruction. And that when Stalin dies, the country seemed to, and not 100% obviously, there is like a civil war that happens because of this, but the country does pivot towards unification with the West instead of alienation from the West, and the idea. And it's not a bad idea. Like, this is why I don't really rail too loudly against like Yeltsin and Gorbachev and these guys, because I've come to see that given the trauma that they experienced, given what they were looking at as a country and as a people, that it is a good idea to seek unification with your traditional enemies in the hopes that they will simply stop invading you, right? That they will simply stop invading you. Here, I want to do the thing that I usually do. Pull up Google Maps while I talk about this. I don't know why it keeps going to that random spot. All right. Like, Russia wants to unify with Germany over this period of time. Germany is the country that invaded them. Germany is the country that killed 20 million of its citizens. Germany is the one that vomited out Adolf Hitler. And the adage, and so they're left with the choice, well, do we constantly put ourselves at odds with Germany, or do we actually attempt to reach out and create some kind of economic or larger treaties by which we will become allies? And then for Germany to turn around and then attack us, that will be a much more difficult thing for it to pursue. And what is so silly from my perspective is that I think that it should have worked. That when you go through like Brezhnev, Yeltsin, Gorbachev, and all of this, it really was looking as though that was what was going to happen. Russia was part of the G7, what was then called the G8. There was unification that was beginning to happen. Russia was becoming closer to the West. It was no longer being seen as an enemy so much. It had fallen out of our media discourse as an enemy. Remembering throughout the 80s that Russia really was like the enemy was always Russian, right? You think about like the Rocky series, these sorts of things, and and so Putin comes into power around 2000, and he is more or less, he's a former KGB agent who is really put into the position that he's put into because he is pro-West. There's a really great series of pictures, if you can find it, of Putin going around to all of the leaders of the European countries and glad-handing and shaking hands and all of this, and he looks pleased as punch. He looks just so happy to be there. Everybody he's talking to looks just so friendly and cordial. He really is a man, in that moment, I see him as a man who is making friends and making allies with former enemies, remembering the trauma of World War II. That his goal as a leader very obviously seems to be to get in bed with the West, and certainly to enrich himself, and certainly to enrich his fellow oligarchs. Let's not fool ourselves, but always with this sort of pressing idea that this is a path of peace that will be good for Russia. During this period of time, Yeltsin, Gorbachev, and the rest, there is what's known as NATO encroachment. That NATO really at one point was basically on Germany's border, and then very slowly over time it's now taken over Poland and Romania and come up onto Ukraine's border. And while this was happening, every single Russian leader was saying, there are red lines. Ukraine is a red line. You cannot put NATO, an organization that exists explicitly in the doctrine for the destruction of the Soviet Union. That's the reason why NATO was created. NATO was created to destroy the Soviet Union. That's the reason it exists. And the idea that Germany was in NATO while the Soviet Union still existed, seeking to destroy the Soviet Union, should be fairly telling to where the position and where the head of the West rests. Once the Soviet Union fell, it rose questions for a little while. Well, why does NATO exist then? And now it's become very obvious to Russia, and they've said on several occasions that we consider the existence of NATO to be for the destruction of Russia. That it wasn't the political apparatus of the Soviet Union that they were after. They are after Russian soil. And they know that that is true. Throughout Putin's career, he has had to make several difficult choices. He has witnessed atrocities and horrible things that NATO has done. A real turning point for him was Libya. That Libya was the strongest economy, led by Gaddafi. Gaddafi had committed a bloodless coup against the monarchy, dethroned the monarchs, and essentially enacted a socialist state. It became the strongest economy on the continent of Africa, basically eliminated homelessness, did all the things that communists do. Eliminated homelessness, raised the living standard, raised the literacy rate. All of these sorts of things happen in Libya. And the United States, in less than a year, hell, maybe in less than a couple of months, went in and turned that country into a country that has open air slave trade markets to this day. Libya was destroyed by NATO explicitly, very clearly, very cleanly. There's a famous Hillary Clinton quote. We came, we saw, he died, and then she cackles like a she-banshee. Putin was not pleased with that and spoke very strongly against the destruction of Libya. And that was a turning point moment for him. The invasion of, if you go to Georgia, there is a moment where where basically America attempts to do exactly the same thing that they did, which is coup the government of Ukraine. They tried to do it in Georgia. I shouldn't say they tried to do it. They successfully couped the Georgian government. And Putin did exactly in Georgia what he is currently doing now in Ukraine. It was just more successful. Because Putin moved into Georgia, the people of Georgia themselves were able to commit the Rose Revolution and take back Georgia. This has led to border scuffle. Like, Putin's not going to give this territory up. He still is self-interested and interested in Russia, after all. But the reason why that dispute exists is because of the United States going into Georgia and meddling in the first place. Another fairly major turning point for Putin. During this time, he applies to NATO and is rejected. He's rejected from NATO in 2010. Another major turning point. Finally, you have, I shouldn't say finally because this is all ongoing, you have the Syrian war itself. The Syrian war, the United States wanted to take Assad out, much in the same way they wanted to take Gaddafi out. And Russia provided the support and provided the assistance to Assad, amongst other international partners, in order to prevent the same fate happening to him as happened to Gaddafi. During this period of time, Assad has managed to stabilize the region a great deal. ISIS is chased out of much of the province, or much of the country, rather. And so Syria, Assad, owe their existential existence right now to Vladimir Putin, who, of course, is self-interested as well. He wants that oil himself, obviously. But that's more or less the broad stroke of Syria. Finally, you zoom into what happened in Ukraine. That Vladimir Putin, the man who wanted to be in NATO, the man who wanted to ally with the West, no doubt in my mind that on day one, if somebody put in front of him a contract that said, you're in NATO, you're part of the West, all the integration, you're in the International Monetary Fund, you're in all of it, sign it, he would be like, yes, ma'am. The man who wanted to be a Westerner. In 2014, the United States coups the government of Kiev during the Euromaidan crisis. Vladimir Putin has eyes and sees it happen, sees that it has happened in Ukraine, explicitly says that this is a red line, that it cannot be tolerated. The Nazis that we fund go down to the region that Putin currently occupies. I had it right here. Did I lose it? I did. That's okay. The region that Putin currently occupies, and started shelling civilians and massacring civilians. They started committing a genocide in the region. They banned the usage of Russian speech. It was not safe to be a Russian person walking on the streets. 14,000 citizens were killed during that period of time on the lead up to the invasion. Putin himself was his own citizens, including the communist flank of his own parliament, were rising up against him and demanding he intervene directly with military. This is something that is not well understood. That people pretend like this is a Putin decision and it's all about Putin. The great man of history fallacy. Putin was brought to this decision by his own people. That the people of Russia demanded that this happen. That the critique that Putin's own citizens have for him is that he didn't do it sooner. That's the reason why the mobilization effort went so smoothly. That when he finally said a mobilization, he experienced a dip in polls a bit, because I think the people of Russia were hoping this would be a dust-up, much in the same way that Crimea was. Not to skip what happened in Crimea. When the coup happened in 2014, Putin responded by seizing Crimea. Well, the truth is that there was already a Russian military base in Crimea, and the military base just declared itself part of Russia. It's not like Putin sent a big military force or something. The military force was already there. Putin, the man who wanted to be a Westerner, Putin was brought into this conflict by a simple choice. Either take your country into this conflict, or we will be rid of you and put someone in place who will. And so he made the choice. He made the choice to go along with his country and be the leader during this period of time. When he invaded, he was hoping that it would have been a dust-up. Like Georgia was a dust-up. That he was hoping that they were going to be able to roll tanks in. And if you see the maps and if you see what happened at the beginning of the war, this is exactly how it went. That they were rolling all of their tanks past villages, past smaller cities, towards Kiev. And the goal was for them to surround Kiev and for Zelensky to surrender. That was their goal. That's what they hoped would have happened. Instead, they got what they got. The West has started to funnel weapons into this now easily declared that the West itself, through things like CSIS, is declaring this conflict a proxy war. It is a war of Russia versus the West, as they themselves say. If you want my overt opinion of the West in this matter, but also all matters internationally, we are the Nazis on the world stage. That Germany, the Nazis lost, but fascism won. That we have always acted as Nazis on the world stage. We will continue to act as Nazis in the world stage. We fund Nazis directly. The Azov Battalion exists. I can go through the litany of things that Zelensky has done to support the Nazis in his own region. It is only a matter of time, in my perspective, until Nazi salutes are openly done in Kiev. I suspect that after one more election cycle, we will see Nazi salutes in the parliament. And perhaps even during the election cycle. The path forward in all of this should be a ceasefire, a concession by the West that this region is lost, that Putin's war goals are by and large claimed, perhaps not the denazification of Ukraine, that is really the only rational, peaceful way forward. And if the West does not go along with that and turns this into a real meat grinder, then my opinion generally of this war is that the Russians will eventually win because they're willing to commit hundreds of thousands of troops. Because for them, this is an existential threat. For them, this goes well beyond just the sports casting version of politics that we get from our mainstream media. For them, this is the heart and soul of Russia, going in and fighting against Nazis, remembering the trauma that they bear, that they still bear from World War II. They lost grandfathers. They lost family. There are stories that still go around Russia of World War II and how the Nazis invaded. And now they've got Nazis on their border that we are funding, killing ethnic Russians. Remembering, Ukraine was a part of the Soviet Union. Ukraine was part of Russia as early as the mid-90s. This is an enormous spiritual conflict for the Russians. They are fighting not just for themselves, but for the honor of their own families and the honor of their own ancestors. That Putin's alternative choice was to stand by and watch Nazis kill Russians on his border. It's no choice that anyone would tolerate. And if he hadn't done it, he would no longer be the leader of Russia, and the new leader of Russia would be the one doing this war. That's a long-winded way of going about it, but I think that everything I said I believe to be true. That's my perspective of Putin. That if it was up to him, if somebody had have given him the magic wand and said, whatever you want, Vladimir Putin, he would have said, I want to be in NATO. I want to be in the EU even. I want to be part of this organization. I want assurances that Germany will not rise again and strike at us again. He was denied. And then those very forces, these very forces that killed 20 million citizens that he is in charge of, are beginning to move forward and coup a government on his border. I don't think he had another choice. I think he did what he did because he had to. It's a fairly thorough, maybe a little bit more than you were expecting, but it's been a long time since I've been able to say all of that, so I'm glad that I did. I don't believe that any of us would have done any differently, considering the situation. Hope that's good for you, Rax. Eric, I was arguing with a lib in Vasha. Why are you doing that? Don't bother with Vashites, dude. Vashites have brain rot. Comment section where she was supporting the pro-Ukrainian supporters. Yeah. No, of course. Like, they're liberals, right? Like, they're pro-imperialists. They genuinely view themselves as superior. Like, I think that's the thing that you got to land on when it comes to Vashites, is that they just genuinely think that they are superior, and that's it. There's no rational. It's not rational. You can't rationalize your way out of it. Content says, I think the rally promoted both ideas. It was anti-war abroad and was loaded with tacit support of local reactionary politics. I would think that anti-war reactionaries simply wants to bring the war home. I have thought on that a lot, Content, and I gotta tell you, I think that it's really come down to just like I don't think the people who organized that rally, like that certainly there are local reactionaries and those sorts of people. I just don't think they're as smart as all of that. Like, if they were smart, they wouldn't be reactionaries. But I think that, so I've really come to recognize that, like, they're not the ones that are connecting those dots. We're the ones that are connecting those dots. And we are sort of attributing to them a little bit more intelligence than I think that they're due. Like, it's a very sort of right-wing, dare I say, fascist thing to say the enemy is both smart and stupid, right? And, well, we know they're stupid. They're reactionaries. So I have to believe that their sentiment for anti-war positions is genuine. I just have to, because they're not smart enough. Like, that we're the ones creating a conspiracy surrounding them. But there's no evidence for the conspiracy to be true. And it really is one of those situations where, like, so you would say to these guys, So you're against this war over here, but this conflict over here you're fine with. And they would pretend like there's a difference and do a kind of a thing because people can hold contradictory ideas in their head. There's that cognitive dissonance that people can have. And if you're a reactionary, you definitely have it. So, again, I find myself saying what I've said before, that this is the reason why I tend to respect conservatives more than liberals. Because conservatives believe what they say. What they say is shit. Like, it's shitty what they say, but they believe it. Whereas liberals don't really believe what they say. That they are more manipulative and being more dishonest. And trying to pretend like the things that they do are for your benefit. When they're not. So if a bunch of conservatives are getting together in an anti-war rally, I tend to think that they're doing that because they think that's the right thing to do. And any kind of ulterior motive or any kind of secondary thing that these people might be bringing forward, I think is largely us assuming that of them, putting that on them, saying of them that, oh, well, this must be what it is they're attempting to do. And like, maybe you'll find a segment doing that, but if that small segment of people who are doing that is enough to derail the whole project and the whole idea, then you'll never do anything. Nothing will ever happen. Come and see, yeah. Oh, good. It is a good film. It was harrowing. It was difficult to watch. The depiction of the Nazis is fairly accurate, if you ask me. I find it so odd that I have so many common ground with libertarians over this issue. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Being a human is weird. People are weird and complex and have many contradicting and difficult ideas. Like, I do find that many libertarian, like Tulsi Gabbard is like this for me, where she's not anti-war, she's anti-this war. That she still does view it as the responsibility of the United States to be the policeman in the world. She just thinks that she would be a better policeman. That's more or less her position. That she's not anti-military, she's just anti-stupid wars, as she calls them. She's not anti-war, she's anti-stupid war. Which I think fundamentally misunderstands the nature of the American military and the nature of the American empire, right? I think it fundamentally misunderstands what it does in the world and how it operates to make those sort of proclamations, right? A smarter decision would be simply to not do that, like don't do war. But I do think that there were people, especially at that Rage Against the War Machine rally, who, while they are thought of as right-wingers, they are, I think, well-meaning people who are trying to confront. Like, this is something that I think we have to really sort of rectify and understand, is that I do think that there are people, like, not everyone who considers themselves conservative is actually going to go along with some of this fascist Nazi shit. Like, I think that that's true. And something like this moment with the Rage Against the War Machine moment does show you that that is actually true. That fundamentally, I do think that people are trying their best. We're just so awash with nonsense. We're just so awash in nonsense that nobody knows where to turn or where to go. And so I think we've got a group here that finally just said, let's just do a rally and damn it, whatever. And let's just invite everybody. And whoever comes. Let the chips fall where they may. We got to do something. We got to do something. Forget all this drama about libertarian or communist or socialist or anything. We got to get out there. We got to make it. We got to do a thing. We got to make a stink. We've got to do it. We got to get 1,000 people out there. We got to do it. We got to do it. Like, I'm not going to be able to live with myself. We don't get out there and make a statement and make a scene and do something. Never going to be able to actually live with myself if this keeps happening and we don't actually get out there and do something. And then all of the analysis is happening by the armchair quarterbacks the people who didn't show up, who don't seem to care to show up in the first place. There are sources that I have been paying attention to that I lost a lot of support for over that particular issue. I think the World Socialist website lost a lot of respect from me over the article they made about that rally, because at the end of the day, where's their rally? Where's their statement that these wars are even bad? So they lost my support, and anybody who's going to stand up and say to me that we should be shitting on people just because we're not 100% politically aligned purely, because they are standing up and saying we need to end these wars. Nah, I'm not interested in that. Good for those people for doing it. I support them for doing it. We can disagree on a lot of other things, and maybe very seriously on a lot of other things. But if they're going to take to the streets, if they're going to go to the halls of power, if they're going to make a stink, great. They're doing the right thing, and we should support them. Critical support. Russia is in and has been in the process of salvaging the good parts of the USSR. Evening, Tinker. How you doing, bud? I didn't actually watch Putin's speech. I should watch that speech. I meant to, and I just kind of forgot, honestly. Janet Yellen supposedly in Ukraine to meet Zelensky. I think one of the more interesting stories that's coming up is that Zelensky is going to be meeting with Xi Jinping, or at least Chinese ambassadors. I don't know if it is Xi Jinping directly, but Zelensky is going to be meeting with some Chinese delegates. I think that that's very interesting. That there's interesting things that are happening. Like Saudi Arabia just sent $400 million worth of oil products. Not oil itself and not weapons, but what's been called oil products. So things that are made from oil. It just sent $400 million of it to Ukraine, which I think the Saudi Arabian, you guys know my position on Saudi Arabia. They're Machiavellian evil geniuses. I just think they see that as good business. They're just like, hey, I know how to make $400 million. Here you go. They probably got a pretty good markup on it. Tinker says the theft of Russia into small private hands was the biggest outside of the theft of the Indian subcontinent by the British. Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with that perspective too much. I do tend to take a little bit of a softer position. As I was saying earlier, like I do think that the people who moved away from the Soviet Union weren't being irrational. That I think that they saw that an attempt to unify with the West was going to mean an abandonment of the communist project. And I think given the trauma of World War II and what that invasion by Germany meant, that attempting to amalgamate with Germany and become integrated into Germany's economy in order to avoid that kind of conflagration again seems to me to be not irrational. So that's another layer onto it. Maybe that tickles your brain a little. Good evening, that guy. Good to see you, bud. Major, USA wants... Yeah. USA really just seems to want Russian lands for capitalism. Yeah. No, absolutely. They just want the resources. That's all America has ever done. They just want to go into a region and just strip it of its resources, enslave the population, and harvest more resources with that population. That's the business that the United States is in and has always been in. They've never not operated that way. Like, and I feel like getting people to understand that is like right now I'm listening to a book called I forget the exact title of it, but it's the thesis of the thing is that the boomers are sociopaths. That's the thesis of the thing. And the entire time I'm listening to this thing, the guy's providing data and providing an argument and all this kind of stuff, and I'm listening and I'm like, okay, yeah, you get that like we committed a genocide against like the First Nations people and like enslaved the black population, right? Like you understand that it was a generation that did that, right? Like you can sort of indict the boomers if you like, and there are critiques, obviously, but to pretend as though the boomers being dismissive of even their own family is something that's new, in American history, is sort of the thing I have umbrage with as I'm listening to it. I'm like, yeah, America has always operated this way. It's always operated this way. I'll have a read of that later, that guy. Remind me of that near the end of the stream, or maybe send me I'll see it in my email. I'm sure of it. I was just about maybe send me a message. Like, you did send me a message. You sent me a message on Patreon, and that'll go into my Gmail. Okay, great. Yeah, Putin really had an eye-opener during a phone call between Yeltsin and the West where Yeltsin was being bullied, yeah. Yeltsin and Gorbachev were treasonous traitors. They should have been rounded up with their families. Strong opinions. Yeah, strong opinions. Transylvanian, Russia has enough oil. They want to keep the Middle East from completely falling to Western puppet regimes or anarchy and chaos like Libya, because that would eventually spread to Russia, yeah. Also, Russia has an important naval base in Syria that they don't want to lose, yeah. If ISIS had prevailed in Syria, Russia would have another series of CIA-funded Islamist insurgencies like Chechnya in their Caucasus to look forward to. I think all of that you just said was true, dude. I really do. Like the Russians didn't get involved in Syria for nothing, right? Like the Russians are afraid of America, and they are absolutely right to be afraid of America. And someone pointed out recently to me, I forget who it was, but I was listening, that this invasion of Ukraine has been a complete botch for the Americans in regards to India. That India, pre this invasion, was actually pro-Western and trying to kind of do the same thing that Russia was sort of doing. Let's integrate ourselves into the Western system. Sure, we have this history with the British. Sure, we've got all this, those traumas as well. But it's better to integrate. But this situation in Ukraine, I feel, has really convinced India that they will never let you integrate. That there's something poisonous in the mind of the Westerner. There's something poisonous in the ethos of the West that is just insisting that we are the greatest country on earth. We have a manifest destiny. What we do is essentially God-given. When we show up and tell you what to do, we expect it to be done. We do not view you as a peer. You are our servants. And I think that this situation in Ukraine really convinced India of that, and it happened right away. Because the entire rest of the world saw what happened. Like, the entire rest of the world saw what happened. That anybody who is sitting around going, well, okay, Germany, like the Nazis were just an aberration, right? What an odd thing, worthy of our study, but surely an aberration that now things have normalized. We're in the end of history, after all, right? This is what it's going to be now. This is what it's going to be now. Well, to see the United States do something like Libya, to see what it's done throughout the Middle East, finally to see what it's done to Ukraine, what it's willing to do with Russia, you can't play with these guys. You can't play with these guys. Like, America is a terrorist rogue state. And it must be considered that way by any country that has a rational, sane brain. The only country that I think remains that can't really afford to alienate the United States is actually Canada, for the obvious reason that if we alienate the United States, they will destroy us. Like, my opinion of Canadian politics is, by and large, at least they're not killing us. And so we're playing a, like, yes sir strategy. That's what we're doing. That they're right there. They've got this big ass military. They have no allies. Like, the Americans will murder whoever they need to murder to get whatever they want. And if they decide one day that Canadian farmland looks good and they're worried that we're restricting them or something like that, they'll just come up here and take it. Like, and you're fucking fooling yourself if they won't. So we're just playing a smile and nod strategy up here in Canada. We're just like, oh, you wanna use our navy to lily pad over to Nigeria? Yeah, oh sure, ha ha. Eh? That's what we're doing. This is worth putting up. Yep, the Donbass War has been nightly news in Russia for the last decade or so. Yeah, of course. It's a major war on your border being fought by Nazis. NATO-funded Nazis, right? Like, you think about that, right? Like, that really puts the Russians in a different existential space. Like, that's what makes this conversation that I watch so embarrassing. They're just illiterate, ignorant boobs. They just don't give a shit about what's going on in Russia. Like, every so often, it keeps happening. I'm on TikTok, and I'm, like, looking around on TikTok, just pissing a couple of minutes away. And there's, like, somebody that comes up and says, whoa, listen to what they're saying on Russian news. Whoa. And then two adults talk about the Russian war, like adults would. And we're just so used to listening to children babble on like babies that when adults talk about it in serious ways, our minds are blown. Like, we are going to fall behind dramatically because of this. Because we refuse to have adult conversations and act like adults. And that's down to, like, the highest possible levels of our governance. Are just baby brains. My doctoral thesis is going to be how fascism lost the battle in World War II, but won the war in the long term. Yeah, that is a shameless plug. Very good, Eric. G.H. Elison is pretty good on Ukraine. Let's take a look. I tell you what, guys, if I have less than 17 likes, you're all fucking fired. I have 10 likes, you motherfuckers. See this? See this right here? See this fucking right here? What's this bullshit? What's this? See this? 10? 16. Yeah, I knew it. One of you was just like, oh shit, I gotta get out of here. That's right. The shame. The shame likes. Yes, the shame likes. Shame. Thanks, guys. That's fun. What the fuck did I do that for? I did that because of this. I swear to God. Got some holdouts. People are just like, fuck your likes. All right. I can't do anything about it, so. And I don't even know which ones of you it is. You bastards. Christopher, good to see you. Glad to be here. I'm glad you're here, bud. Struggling to find even an entry-level job right now. Will you get around to Lula's peace treaty today? Oh, I don't even know about that. So, is he joining in with China on Ukraine? We're having a Ukraine cast today because I don't get to do Ukraine very often, and so I think today's the day that I was going to do it. Lula peace treaty. Lula intensifies Brazil diplomatic push for peace in Ukraine. Yeah. No, let's do it, because, like, this is part of it. This is part of it, right? Lula, from very beginning all this, fuck you, Bloomberg. Hey, Bloomberg. Hey, Bloomberg. Hey, Bloomberg. Hey, Bloomberg. Get wrecked. Get wrecked, Bloomberg. Get wrecked, Bloomberg. Piece of shit. Tinker, Putin is making a big mistake. He doesn't want to fight a larger war and end it quickly with 1 million conscripts. NATO sees this as weakness. Yeah, I think that is... I don't want to interpret it as a mistake, but it is definitely like Putin definitely wanted this to be a dust-up. He definitely wanted to go in there with the forces he had and end it quickly. He was sort of hoping for a quick surrender. And now that it's kind of ground in, he's sort of doing a bit of a balancing act between like mobilizing and keeping things stable at home. Like there is that element, right? He needs to keep things stable at home. That he doesn't want to deal with an internal crisis and an internal coup. Like it's completely possible. It is completely possible. Like that is one of the things that like I think the West throws that around a lot more than they should, obviously, but it is possible. It's within the realm of possibility that like the leadership will just say, "Hey, it's time to go, bud." Right? And public sentiment hasn't turned nearly bad enough for that to happen. But conscripting 1 million people all at once, and I don't know that that would actually be like practical from a logistical position. That you can only train so many people so fast, right? So if you do like 100,000 people, well, you can start pushing them through the training process and start getting like, 5,000 people out a week. But if you do 1 million all at once, well, you can only really push them through the system so fast, right? The system's only as big as it is. And unless you build the capacity of the system, then you're only going to ever get the maximum amount of conscripts that you can get out of that system. And so what's the point of conscripting 1 million people all at once if your systems can't actually push them through and get them trained at that pace? So I think that plays a little bit too, and you can get into a larger argument, well, he should have built up capacity and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so on and so forth. But, it is as it is. I think that Putin didn't really understand the degree to which the West was willing to bring this to his doorstep. That's what I think. That I think he thought that once I go in with a big, strong military and push in there and show that we're not messing around, then they'll back off. Well, that didn't fucking happen. Lula's peace treaty. Yeah, I mean, both China now. I had an article here. Did I keep it up? Yeah. China and Brazil then now have both presented a peace alternative. These, of course, are just being roundly rejected. Just roundly rejected. Right? U.S. joins EU in rejecting Beijing's peace proposal. Sanctions more Chinese firms. Yep. So I suspect that we'll see some Brazilian sanctions happening. Lula is a really cool figure to see right now. I got to tell you, it's really cool to see this guy in power right now, and he's kind of a baller. Honestly, he is just balling down there. And what I think the Bolsonaro faction really screwed themselves up and really screwed up their faction's chances for the future. Basically, gave Lula all the excuse he needs to run that place the way he wants to run it. That like there really isn't any political opposition for Lula at the moment because the Bolsonaro faction did try to do a coup. Like it's so fucking stupid. Like the more prudent decision would have been to just accept the electoral loss and then build forces and come back. Right? That would have been the smarter way of going about it. And then act while you're in power, do everything you can to sort of dig your heels in, act as an antagonist, build power back, that sort of stuff. But because they did the coup and it didn't go over the way it went in America where nothing happened and everybody stayed in power, like the people who were connected to that got arrested and purged. Like it was serious in Brazil. So that's given Lula a lot of sudden power that he didn't have before. And because he's Lula and because he's been doing this for his whole fucking life, including being arrested by these motherfuckers for a period of time, he's coming in and he's just like laying it out. He's just like being like, this is what we want. This is what we're going to do. Fuck you. It's really something to see. Eric says, once I get over long COVID, I'm going back to that project. I'll let people know as I develop it further. But John, you just spewed Putin propaganda. I just call it how I see it, bud. Transylvanian says, I agree with you, John. Some leftists give libertarians way too much credit. Libertarians are just not that smart, or they wouldn't be libertarians. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's, at this point, we really have to prioritize the anti-war, anti-imperialist cause over any other domestic political debates or sectarianism. This will mean accepting that we will find tactical agreements with some very dumb and very distasteful people. Yeah, but like, because it is becoming a matter of survival. Like, nuclear war is on the table. Like, that is a no bullshit real thing that can happen. And the idea that we are not going to go out into the streets and protest with libertarians because we're like, oh, you guys want to just give everything over to corporations, eh? Like, you know, I think that this is actually a more serious issue. Ethan Huntley from Britain. Good to see you, bud. Guys, I've got fucking roaches in my apartment, and I've got an exterminator coming in on Wednesday, and I am hype for it. They're coming out of this radiator. They're coming out of this fucking radiator right here. And when the exterminator comes, I'm going to go blast the shit out of that radiator. I hope he does it. Ethan Huntley. Absolute pleasure to see you, man. Hey, man, you got me interested in communism a lot more. I was going to do an extended project on it. Got any good ideas or starting points to talk about or argue for? Thank you. Listen to the Communist Manifesto, dude. First of all, I'm very, very thankful that I am responsible for getting you interested in communism a lot more. Listen to the Communist Manifesto. Stick to, if you're going to do like a project on it, I really have always felt that the best thing to do is to just stick to the fundamentals. And the fundamentals is that we have owners. There are people who own us, and there are people who are owned. And this never gets said at all. This is why, like, a big reason why I do this channel and a big reason why I talk about the things I do is because I want to talk about the things that don't get talked about. And one of the things I find very strange that we don't openly talk about a lot more is the fact that we have owners. And it's obvious that we have owners. And if you are not yourself an owner, then you are owned. And this is no way to run a society. This is no way to have a civilization. This is no way to be. That we should be attempting to eliminate that dynamic. We should be attempting to eliminate this dynamic of antagonism. And what makes it so difficult is that this is an institutional structure. It's not individuals, right? It's an institutional structure that is in power, that is in place. And what we are fighting back against is not specifically people like Elon Musk or Gates or any of this, although we can and should critique them. But what we are fundamentally pushing back against is the institution of capitalism itself. That the institution of capitalism says that there must be people who own things, own the means of production, own property, own land, own housing, and there must be people who do not. And that this creates a central antagonism for the society. And even though that process has been going on for some time, because that process has been going on for some time, you end up with people who consider themselves and are considered by others to be good people in fairly nefarious positions. That people can just be a landlord and just be trying their best and doing what they are trying to do. And, this is just, so you got to make money somehow. And I had this property, and so I leveraged that property to get that property. And, that seems like a good way to expand my portfolio and do okay. And I'm not throwing people out in the street or anything. Like, I'm trying to, provide a service, I guess. That person is as trapped. Like, that's something I think to really always remember, is that the capitalists are also trapped. Like, they are born into this system too. And even though the system rewards sociopaths and makes sure that sociopaths are the ones that come to the top and become the ruling class and become the primary operators, the true villain is always the system itself, is always the institution itself. And in a way, the ruling class does know that's why meaningful reforms to that system can never take place. That they will give everything else away first. before they even begin to talk about the idea of, hey, maybe the workers should actually have a lot more control than they do, or even a little control of what's going on at all. That idea, I think, is abhorrent to the capitalists on principle. I'll give you a very clear example. That I work in a cafe where we do a profit sharing model. So instead of tips, it's just built into the price that I get a certain percentage of every purchase. And that is done in lieu of asking for tips from people. And I think it's a very equitable and straightforward way of doing it. Then we transferred ownership. We got sold to some other capitalists who were just clueless boobs, basically. There's a lot more drama going on there. But and one of the first things that these clueless boobs are doing is they want to get rid of this profit sharing model and go back to tipping. And it's leaving a lot of us scratching our heads being like, well, what's the point of this? Like, who cares? Like, it's you're just changing the model. And it's just making us understand, it's certainly making me understand, that it's the principle of the thing for these guys. That they don't want the workers to have any connection whatsoever. That the concept of them sharing this with workers is just distasteful to them. Because it's theirs. It's not ours, it's theirs. So, these sorts of antagonisms are all over the place in your society. What's good for the workers is not good for the owners, and what's good for the owners is not good for the owned. It's very straightforward, and this dynamic is always going to tear the society apart. And the only way we can actually get anywhere ever is by creating big, gigantic civil movements. It's no way to organize a society. Like, it's just no way to organize a society. And it will become obvious sooner than we would like. There are going to become dramatic differences in what goes on in our societies and what goes on in the societies of others. That, sure, they'll have their struggles, and as we all have our struggles, but they'll be organized and they'll be working towards common goals and all of this. We are always going to be working against each other in this constant vulturing and disaster capitalism idea of how can we leverage this situation to benefit me, to benefit myself. Because this is something I'll throw at you, Ethan, even though, like, I'm not going to give you sources or anything, because this is something that I've been working on myself. I guess one of the grand, large projects of my own life is sort of this, that the downfall of Western civilization is based on three core principles that I call the holy trinity, or the unholy trinity of the capitalist death cult. And that's the worship of money, just the understanding that money is more valuable than clean air, water, land, even assets. That we will gladly just pour a bunch of milk out into a field somewhere if it means more money. We will gladly burn a bunch of oil into the atmosphere if it means more money. We will do all kinds of ridiculous, stupid things and destroy all kinds of resources and things that are tangible and things that are real, including labor power, if it means more money. And so we worship money, which is as stupid as it gets because money is fake. We invented it in the first place. It's not real. It's literally a game that we're playing. It should be an organizational tool. At best, that's what it is. It's an organizational tool to allow people to exchange productivity amongst themselves with a certain degree of ease, right? That's always the argument in favor of money. But we've come to worship it. And we worship it the same way that we worship any god. We will sacrifice everything for it. This, coupled with the worship of self, which is obvious in the society, right? Everything is about yourself. It's, the idea that self-help gurus, people like Oprah, people like Jordan Peterson, should have any kind of international prominence or be considered intellectuals or any of that kind of stuff is stupid. It shows you that we're a society that's worshiping the self, that we care about ourselves. We don't care about collective ideas. And then all of this, these two things are tied together very neatly by the worship of stupidity. That And you can see that in the way that we discuss the Ukraine war. You can watch something like this and witness the worship of stupidity happen in front of you. Not just being pleased with how stupid we are, but also being disgusted by other people's knowledge. That I think is very important. That it's important to be disgusted by intelligence and knowledge. And you can see that in American policy, American foreign policy, all over the place. And take a look at who we make famous, and take a look at who we make the most popular people in our society. So those three things together have created a deadly, deadly concoction that is, in my view, the downfall of Western civilization. The worship of money as a god, the worship of self, and the worship of stupidity. And we are going to experience 100 years of humiliation because of it, and a collapse of our central ethos. Because at the end of the day, we are not stronger than the forces of the universe or the planet. Money is not real, and the things that really matter don't have any patience for the stupid or the dim-witted. Especially stupid, dim-witted people who think they're super smart. Hope that helped you, Ethan. Major. People's ideologies change a lot over time, too. Yeah, there's that, too. I also do think, like, I say this a lot about the libertarians, right? Every time I listen to these guys, they sound like communists until they start talking about solutions. Then it becomes obvious that they've just never read anything written by a communist. That they're coming to a lot of this stuff just based on their own experience and their own ideas and their own thoughts. You know, they're just sitting there being like, yeah, you know, I work real hard, and then my boss comes along and he takes all of it, and where's that happening to me? And then they ship that overseas. It doesn't make any goddamn sense. God damn it, I tell you what, if I put my hard work in, you know, a man should earn the sweat of his brow, and I feel like these elite globalists are coming in and taking our money and taking our productivity away from us, taking our land, taking all the thing we do, and they're sending it all overseas for nothing instead of helping us out with the yeah. Well, why don't we have better health care around here? You know, we should have better health care around here. You know, you know what we got to do, and then here's what happens. Here's what happens. This is the linchpin. You know what we gotta do? We gotta get rid of the government. That's what we gotta do. It's the government that's getting in the way of everything. And if we just get rid of that ding-dang-dongly-dong-ding-darn government, our lives will be so much better. And the man's work will be his own labor produce. And then if they did get rid of the government, they'd find out pretty quickly who their real owner was. So I just think they don't actually, like... I think every time I talk to like a libertarian and I finally get him out of the defensive Ben Shapiro mode of like, I got to dunk on this guy, right? And I actually talk to them, I find genuinely just a person who's trying to do their best, who's well-meaning to a degree, and who just doesn't really understand the society that he lives in or how it's structured, right? That's why they keep going to the WEF. Right? That's why they keep going there. They keep going, oh, the World Economic Forum's trying to rule and dominate us, and they're infecting us and all that kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, you got problems closer to home, son. You got problems closer. So yeah, I'm sure there's a group of people, bunch of kooky losers, get together and say a bunch of kooky shit, and I'm sure some of that kooky shit is getting spread around, all that kooky nonsense. Absolutely. Like, absolutely. Right? But, like, stop worrying about an Illuminati. Start worrying about your boss. Like, start worrying about your owner. How about that? Start worrying about the guy that's in your district and the structure of how that looks. So I think they're well-meaning enough. They're just not moored. And I actually do think a lot of those libertarians could probably suddenly be like, oh, wait a minute, this Karl Marx guy, you actually listen to this manifesto of his? It makes a lot of goddamn diggity-dang sense to me. I tell you what. The trouble is that that stumbles into the... I genuinely believe and this is a belief. I don't have the document, although when the document appears, I'll hold it in front of you and be like, I fucking told all of you that the CIA is 100% hypnotizing us through these smartphones. I completely believe it. And it's like completely like, and putting people in like a trance state and then being like, communism will make you feel bad. If you hear the word communism, you will just become angry. Right? I actually had like a really interesting, the Gospel of Satan. Oh, good, Heldress. Very good. 71% of Americans think the U.S. should spend more on assistance to the poor. But if you call it welfare, that number drops to 30%. So assistance to the poor, Americans, 71%. Welfare, 30%. That is a trigger word. And I can be easily convinced that the CIA is using these to embed trigger words into your consciousness to make it so that when you hear them, even though they mean assistance to the poor, makes you go, welfare, I don't want him, but I'm no goddamn welfare, I'm on welfare, I'm not going to have any damn welfare. Anybody who said welfare is dumb, that's a communist. And I'm not going to be goddamn or have any communist. 100 million dead communists will fight hard for. Like, I genuinely think that 100% happens. And when the document appears, when we finally do a church commission on the CIA, and when it comes out that there's like Operation Banana Panic, or Banana Panic, or Banana Pajama or something, right? And we all go, the CIA was working with apps in order to embed trigger words into the consciousness of citizens. I'll be like, here you go, fuckers. What was I telling you the whole fucking time? I don't delve into conspiracy very often, but this is one that I'm happy to keep alive, and I'm hoping to spread out into the consciousness of the people. Because I don't know why we explicitly, why are we trusting these things? Why do we trust the CIA? You're telling me that they're getting in bed with all your media, but they're not trying to do that? Get completely fucked. I've watched a hypnotist put someone into a hypnotic state. You can watch the video on YouTube. There's a guy who he puts people into a hypnotic state using a video game screen. Somebody walks up to an arcade and starts playing the arcade, and he's in the hypnotic state. He's out. They relocate him to another place and then waken him up again. Hello? Like, abso-fucking-lutely they can do this. Like, abso-fucking-lutely they can do this. They've got the technology for it. We've watched them do it. Like, and here's a really cool piece of corroborating evidence. This doesn't make any fucking sense at all. Unless. So there you go. There's my one kooky, outlandish conspiracy theory that's 100% true. And when I get the document, I'm going to put it in your face, and you're all going to be like, holy shit, John's a prophet. Nah, I just put two and two together on that one. Transylvanian. If Chris Hedges, who's been one of the most principled anti-empire activists of the past, however many decades, can put all sort of disagreements aside for the sake of an anti-war rally, then we can too. Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. Like, I just am like, I really am like at some point, like, when do we put the differences aside? Do we wait until after the bomb goes off? You know? And it's not like there's, like, the political makeup of the United States is largely on the right. You know? Like, this idea that, like, I like the way that Rainer Shea put it. We should be building the left flank. The left is already really weak. For good reason. Like, it's not like nothing happened, right? It's not like it's not like the left is weak out of laziness, right? The left is weak because it's been systemically destroyed on purpose, intentionally, repeatedly, over and over again for decades. And so it makes sense that the first push on some kind of movement like this would come from the right, because the right is stronger, because it doesn't get systemically attacked in the same way. It doesn't get dismantled. There wasn't a McCarthy period that went after Nazis. Quite the opposite. Major says a week or so later there was a pro-war rally in D.C. with blood and soil flags. Amantha Power was there. Oh, ugh. Yeah. Got a clip here of Justin Trudeau at a pro-war rally. This is what happens. Yeah. Get him. Get him. Guy literally says Slava Ukraini, and then a bunch of people are screaming at him. Good. Fantastic. I think the WEF is a real issue, but it's mostly capitalists being capitalists. I mean, yeah, don't get me wrong. Like, I think that the WEF is, like, it's disgraceful. Like, the shit that gets said at the WEF is like, yeah, that's concerning. And if I started to see that manifesting in my country, I would be like, oh, that's concerning. But I don't think they, like, libertarians talk about these guys as if these guys are the Illuminati, as if they're the owners of the society. The reason why the WEF is concerning is because when capitalists run out of ideas during periods of crisis, they reach for the ideas that are lying around. And the WEF is putting some ideas out there that are demonic. There's no other way to really describe what they do. And capitalists will reach for these ideas because there's no other ideas lying around. Because the ideas that are coming out of the left have been destroyed. Have a good night, Ethan. Baked Potato, good to see you. Box, good to see you too, bud. Generation Y Me, good to see you too, bud. Banana Fish to you, sir. Baked Potato says, if you don't think America is not ever attacking communism or another economic and societal model, then you probably still believe that Santa is real. Or at least you probably just believe in Western power, right? And Western hegemony. That, like, you can sit there and believe that, like, no, we're like this because this is good. It's good that America is like this. America is the best. We're the greatest. We're the greatest country in the world. We don't need no communism coming in here and wrecking it. Wrecking the goodness. Yeah, it's basically what Reagan campaigned and won on, yeah. Telling people that welfare and government were bad, scary words, yeah. And then it's so funny because, like, these guys that are walking around being like, it's the government, we got to get rid of the government. If you start talking to them about intergenerational trauma, they're like, what are you talking about? It was so long ago. It's like, you're literally saying what Reagan said. You're just saying what Reagan said. Like, it's been 45 years, guys. Like, let it go. Generation Y Me, basically a Jeffrey Epstein plotline with MIC produced drugs. Ugh. Yeah, that's what I needed to hear right there. That's beautiful. Content says, actually, yes, there was a guy who went out of his way to massage the narrative of CRT to be associated with anything silly and distasteful. I don't know what that's in response to, but yeah, I mean, it does happen. Like, people definitely go, like, the use, the attack of CRT, like, it was just the classic American racists finding a new language. Like, we say this a lot on the left, that, like, we need to find a better language to discuss the narrative or to discuss our oppression, right? That we need to find better narratives and better ways to articulate. We don't have the language. You hear that a lot. Well, the right is out there making the language. That it's not saying we need to make sure that our white children are not heard, don't hear anything about what we did to black people. We don't need them to know and understand the history of what happened to black people in this country. Because if they do know that, then they might become sympathetic to those black people. Right? They're not going to say that. What they are going to say is CRT is wokeism that's trying to teach our children to hate America. And so we got to get it out of our schools. And it's nonsense. Like, it's a bunch of nonsense. Like it's literally not how anything actually works, but it's working. Like they're getting what they want. So Transylvanian, the conspiratorially inclined right wing thinks the WF are the ones that control society. Yeah, the reality is closer to what Pepe Escobar says. Yeah, the WEF are just the messenger boys of the real owners. I tend to think of the WEF as like a brain trust. It's like a Nazi brain trust, if you think of it that way. That they really are just a bunch of Nazis sitting around thinking, well, we've got this technology and we've got this thing. What can we do with it, and how can we come up with new and innovative ideas to put out on the market? And then they come out and say the most Nazi shit you've ever heard in your life. And it's like, yeah, like they're a Nazi brain trust. And and I just think that, like, that's more how they are. Like, they're sinister and evil and I hate them, but they don't run the show. You know? Nobody really runs the show. I think that's the scariest part for people. Is that I think it is easier for people to come to I think it's easier for people to believe that there's some kind of cabal at the center. That's like an octopus, like operating everything and messing with everything. But the real reality is that there's a lot of octopuses. There's a lot of different organizations, and there's a lot going on. And no one is actually in control. Which is why the whole concept of like free market and just let the market decide is let the market decide is just a bad idea at its core. It's better to organize. It's better to organize and to have a central organizing system. Like and we're seeing it pretty directly. Well, CRT is a good idea. We should teach kids about it more. I mean, CRT, like literally CRT is like university level law. Like, that's what's so fucking stupid about the whole thing. We gotta make sure our kids aren't taught that CRT in school. Great, they're not. Like, they're not. It's a university level theory of how to analyze law. That you say, is it possible that race had something to do with what's happening in this situation, or that this law is somehow affected by race? That's critical race theory, and like that's the short of it. Like that's the short of it. That what they don't, but then they use CRT as a code to say we don't want to teach white kids about black history. That's really what it is. Baked Potato says the Black Panther Party was the only real strong left organization in the U.S. I believe they were on course of influencing real class consciousness. Yeah, the FBI and the CIA had to sabotage them for sure. That's what the war on drugs was all about, right? Not to mention the assassinations. Like, I mean, I don't know how right-wingers, like, can actually say with a straight face that, like, oh, it was so long ago. Like literally the leaders of your civil rights movements were shot, like assassinated. And in several cases, it was admitted that the government did it. Like in Martin Luther King. Like in the case of Martin Luther King, it was just straight up admitted that he was assassinated. There was a New York City cop that came out on his deathbed and whistle blew about the assassination of Malcolm X. Like the idea, and then these same right wingers will turn around and evoke the name of Martin Luther King, as if they weren't the very people responsible for killing him. It's absolutely grotesque what happens in that regard. Beto B, hi John, I'm 50. Since I was a baby, communism's been a bad word. Yeah. So like the idea that we should have like an organized left, or that we should expect there to be an organized left, like, nah. Fuck you, you piece of shit. Ugh. Wednesday, you motherfuckers. You hear me? It's especially bad right now because it's snowing like crazy outside, so all the fucking roaches are coming in. God damn, we're gonna spray the shit out of this place and those roaches are gonna fucking die. What darkens my spirit is the pro-war progressives. It hurts. Yeah, I mean, they're just revealing themselves. right? Like if you're a pro-war progressive, you're a huckster. Pretty straightforward. Or you're just like, you understand that you're on the losing side and that you'll throw your career away if you stand up and do it, right? Like that's what that's another reason why I think more people on the right feel comfortable standing up and taking an anti-war position, because there's no threat to them. Like if someone like, let's say, Bernie Sanders, let's use the biggest example possible, right? If Bernie Sanders is to stand up and say, "Hey, this war sucks and I hate it. It's a dumb war," well, he'll be done. That's the end of his career, right? And he's aware of that. Like, say what you want of Sanders, he's a very astute politician. Like he's taken the positions that he's taken, and he's managed to stay in power. He's managed to maintain his seat in a party that literally will redraw districts in order to get rid of your seat, like they did to Dennis Kucinich. Like they will do that to you. Like they will find a way to oust you. And so Sanders, like sometimes Sanders does stuff and I'm like, I hate that you're doing that, but I understand why you have to, because he's just trying to survive the political system. And I think that that's true in this regard. He's in the pro-war party. Like, the party he's in right now, the Democratic Party, is the party that's waging the war. Meanwhile, the Republicans, Donald Trump literally came out against the Ukraine war fairly recently. Like, he's actually taking an anti-war position, and he's probably going to run on an anti-war platform. And that's crazy. So it means that if you're on the right now, you can be anti-war, because you're not going to lose your position. You're not going to lose your job. You're not going to be in a politically disadvantaged place. In fact, you're right in line with who the likely frontrunner is for the nominee, right? It's what a wild fucking time this is, man. Like, what a wild fucking time when it's the Republicans that are going to run an anti-war ticket. Like, as I live and breathe. Generation Y me, it's awful that it was only like 3 years ago that high school English curriculums changed to discuss what happened to Indigenous people. Yeah, that's right. And like, I had no idea about it until I was well into university. Like, I wasn't, and it wasn't like there was a university course or something. I learned about what actually happened to the Indigenous people through my theater courses. I read a play called Dry Lips Oughta Move to Kapasanking by Thomas Highway, which was very, very honest. That would be the word that I would use. It was very honest about the residential system and what life was in the residential system. And I was like a rural Manitoba like kid. And so at first I had this kind of like scoffing dismissal of First Nations people. And then I had a conversation with my brother about it, who is older and already graduated and all this. And I remember one night he just said to me, "Do you not know about the 60s scoop?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And then he told me, or he had me read something, I don't remember, but he told me that in the 60s, the RCMP and the government and the Catholic Church were kicking in people's doors and taking their kids away in Manitoba. Like, there's always all these conservatives that are like, "Oh, that happened so long ago." And I'm like, the residential school system was taken out of the hands of the last of the Catholic residential school systems closed in 1996. The same year that The Lion King was in theater. So I'm literally sitting in Lion King, watching The Lion King, while little kids are getting released from a Catholic school after having been kidnapped from their parents. And the more you learn about that, the more you realize that they didn't really shut that program down, they just nationalized it. That's really what Trudeau Sr. actually did. That the Catholic Church was doing it privately and making a fucking real botch of it. And we continue it today. It's just been nationalized. So kids aren't dying en masse of like tuberculosis or something. That doesn't happen anymore. But we still take kids away from their parents. For sure. For sure that happens. We've only very recently become truthful in our education systems about our history. I mean, more truthful. We still got a ways to go, but Major says, WF rubs elbows with the powerful people like Bono. That example was sarcasm, but other powerful people. Yeah, I know what you mean. And it's, like, again, like, I think the big thing, I've said this before, but I think it's true as true can be, is that, like, when libertarian types and right-wing types talk about the WF, they get all like, oh, about it, right? They get all like, oh, the WF, can you believe it? Oh. And they're like, can you believe it? I'm like, yeah, of course I can. Like, there's always been kooky little weird organizations like this. Like, always. It's in all history and all kinds. The Masons. Oh, can you believe the Masons exist? Yeah, I can believe that the Masons exist. Like, yeah, like it's not, there's no... Oh, did you know that rich people go to clubs together? Did you know that rich people have think tanks and go and listen to those think tanks? And some of those think tanks are kooky? Yeah. I did know that. Yeah. It's just, I guess they keep talking about it as if it's like this big revelation that I'm supposed to be like, oh my God, yes. When in reality, I'm just like, yeah. Like, yeah. It's very unlikely that they're at the center. Like, it's very unlikely that that is actually the case. CRT is a good start, but it's still fairly liberal theoretical framework, but tends to leave out a lot of the class analysis that you would find in Marxist intersectional theory. Yeah. I mean, baby steps, baby. Like, we gotta take what we can get. We gotta take what we can get when it comes to these guys, you know? Like, I actually think that what happened with CRT is that you have, like, the Black Panthers and Martin Luther King and then and that civil rights movement starting to use Marxism as their language, as the way to discuss things. And that got so thoroughly destroyed that they needed to find a new language. They needed to create a new language so that they could still have these conversations without it being tied into this communist Marxist idea. And so they created CRT in order to continue the conversation without having the FBI kick in their door or something. And then now that's come around, right? Like, now it's come around, and the right has demonized, and now the right's going after it the way that it went after communism, right? And during the McCarthy period. Yeah. I learned all about it on RT. There was only one course that I have taken that talks about what happened to the Aboriginals. It was taught by, yeah. You should be all you need to know, yeah. I want to read about Marxist intersectional stuff. I only get to read one real book like that in school, The Dark Side of the Nation. The Dark Side of the Nation. I found a lot of intersectional stuff also ignores Marxism. Yeah, I mean, I think there's two reasons for that. Two good reasons for that. The first is that, like, if you start quoting Marx, you get shunted out. So I think it's just survival, right? So there is that aspect. And then I also feel like liberals they also want to do that thing that I talk about, right? With the shield, right? Where they want to use identity politics to deflect away from Marxism and away from class conversations. So they don't want it to intersect, right? They see the intersect coming, and instead of allowing the intersect to happen, they hold up it like a shield and deflect it away so it bounces off. That's what they're doing. So I think there's a couple of things. One of them is shitty and the other one is actually good. They're like, if I do talk about this, I'll be chased out of the profession. I'm like, yeah, I understand. Like, you've got shit to lose. Like, you can lose your job, you can lose your status, you can lose the quote-unquote respect of your peers and all that shit, right? Fine. Can't fight back against that. But it's the people who are doing it to, like, you know, for the purity. Get rid of class dynamic, get rid of that critique. Don't allow the intersection to actually happen at all. That I find to be pretty scummy. If the 90s was the end of history, then this is the long epilogue. Yeah. And eventually we get to the post-credit scenes teasing a sequel. Yeah, I hope not. I know that if the credits start to roll, I'm just going to walk right out of the theater. Like, I'm not waiting for an end of... I'm not waiting for a fucking teaser at the end, dude. I'm telling you. I'm going to go get some fucking popcorn or something. I'm leaving. Baked Potato. Canada is one of America's favorite lapdog. Yeah, we follow them to their fake wars, help them do their bidding. It's sick what Canada is doing in Ukraine since 2014 and continues to do there. Yeah, Baked Potato, I talked about this earlier, but I absolutely think it's true, is that the Canadian position is essentially, whatever you say, sir. Whatever you say, sir, as long as they're not bombing us. That's really, I think, the position of Canada, especially modern Canada. That, yeah, I think we align on values a little bit closer than we like to admit. I think we've got, like, you know, a pretty healthy white supremacist streak and all that kind of stuff. But like, there's also just the basic survival aspect of it. That just like, yes, sir, whatever you say, don't bomb me. I'm a good boy. Go bomb them. Absolutely. They're over there. Maybe I'll get a piece of it too. Why not? Whatever you say, sir. That's exactly how we are. And like, if you get that guy into a room without America around and you start talking about America with that guy's like, dude, tell me about it. Like, I absolutely know what you're talking about, bro. Like, yeah, he's a big fucking monster. There's some crazy shit going on down there. Do you understand what's happening in the South? It's just absolutely... Yeah, the prison system? Are you fucking kidding me? And they're trying to bring this private healthcare shit into the... And then America walks into the room and they're like, hey, buddy! Hey, you wanna go over there? You need my boat? You bet, buddy. All right. See you later. Bye! And then America walks out of the room and they're like, fucking this fucking guy. So that's Canada. Like, we can't alienate America. They could just roll over us. And like, we don't want them to bomb us. Grinning, I tend to discount identity politics altogether. I seen as a way for capitalists to build factions within the working class. I mean, I don't think that I can afford to outright ignore identity politics, because I do think that it matters, and it especially matters to the people it matters to. But I think I'm just the wrong guy to talk about it. That's really what it is. Like, I can be an ally, and I can give that platform to the people who want to be platformed for it, and I can encourage and I can be an ally. But I lack the experience and I lack the perspective to actually talk meaningfully. Like, I am literally a straight white man. Like, that's literally my position. And the best that I could ever do, I think, in the discussion of identity politics would be just to talk about my own perspective and see how it does tend to confirm what I hear from the people who are dedicating a lot more of their life and time to it. Like, yeah. So that's really the position. Like, a big reason why I don't tend to talk a lot about identity politics is because I do think it is a deflectionary tactic, but also I tend to think that I just am completely the wrong person to do that. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you want me to talk about gay rights? I'm not gay. Like, I'm not gay. Like, I support you, and I hope that happens, and I'll vote in favor of it. I'm on your side, but I didn't do the research. Like, I didn't do the reading. Like, I basically just gave you my entire position, and I don't think I can base a YouTube channel on that. Like, you want me to talk about trans rights? Okay, same story, right? I support you. I think what's happening in the United States is scary, super scary. But like, I can't really base a YouTube channel on it. You know what I am? A worker. I can talk a lot about that. People like David Pakman, he absolutely hates talking about class and thinks you're crazy if you do so. Yeah, I mean, that's what frauds and hacks do, right? Like, can you imagine actually not talking about class? Like, what are you, a baby? Like, for real. Like, that's a baby brain position. Like, you can't actually try to pretend like there aren't classes. Like, you can't be serious. Like, that's my position. That if you're actually going to be like, what, you think class is an issue? It's like, yeah, there are owners and there are owned. Like, tell me there aren't. Like, that's essentially what they're doing. Like, I consider it to be like on the same kind of wavelength as like flat eartherism. That like, there are classes. It is obvious. There are people who own things and people who do not. Like, it's so obvious. John, going back to Putin's speech, how much do you think he talked about the Ukraine war over our speech? I suspect it's one of those things, Eric, where he didn't talk that much directly about the Ukrainian war, but that the speech was about the Ukrainian war. That's usually how these things kind of go. Like, George W. Bush doesn't talk about Iraq in many of his speeches post-invasion, but everything he's saying is about Iraq. You know? Like, just because they're not saying, and then in Ukraine we did this, and then Ukraine was this, and over here in Ukraine we Ukrained our Ukrainians with our Ukrainians. Just because they're not saying that doesn't mean that what they're saying isn't always directly in relation to what is happening in Ukraine. So I think that's probably how it actually was. I should probably actually just watch the damn thing. What will that really protect us? I don't know what you mean in Major. Sorry, just that's out of bit out of context. Oh, and somebody asked, what's my take on reparations? Yeah, we should give reparations. Had an enjoyable weekend. I had a meaningful weekend. I'll put it that way. I had a weekend that was revelatory, and I think I learned something about myself. So that's good. That is good. It means that I will have better weekends yet to come. Yeah, reparations. Give people money. I don't give a shit. Everybody should get money. We should give money to everybody. Like, we should look at everybody's problem and be like, oh, you want money for that? Here you go. Money's not real. The only reason you were not giving money to people is because we don't want to empower anybody. The capitalists want the money for themselves. They don't give a shit if the economy collapses or something. They don't give a fuck, right? We should give reparations for everything. We should be constantly giving. If the only thing a group of people is asking for to make to say that we made amends or that we started to this process of amend making is some money, okay? Like, oh no. Like, we literally gave like $46 billion to Ukraine to fund Nazis. Like, we can do it. We can do it. And honestly, like, I've gotten to a point in my life where I'm pretty happy to say this. If you're sitting there going, and there's a part of you, if there's something in your chest or your stomach or something that's just, that don't seem right to me, then you're probably just a racist. Like, it's probably just the truth. That, like, I don't need to do a big, deep analysis on this. Like, or you're just butthurt because you're not getting free money, right? But I also think that everybody should get free money. Like, we should have a basic income. Like, we should just everybody should get fucking free money. It should happen. Like, this dumb fucking idea that says we've got a machine that just spits food at you, and houses that are built that are completely empty. Like, this fucking idea that we're just like, we've created barriers. We've created barriers intentionally on purpose. And it's 100% so a small group of people can get servants. Like, that's all it is. It's this entire system. The way it's structured exists exclusively so a tiny group of sociopaths can have servants and workers and own people. Like, that's it. Everyone should get money. And just tell these people to go fucking die, right? Make our lives better. And fuck off. And if you're going to turn around and say to me, oh, John, aren't you worried that's going to collapse the system? I hope it fucking does. What do you think I'm trying to do? Reparations are fine, but not a systemic solution. That's true, too. The point is to change the fundamental power structure. What historically oppressed groups in society need is to seize political power. That's absolutely true. That's actually a much better thing than what I said. I'm going to change what I said to what Transylvanian said and pretend like that's what I said. So that's the better thing to say. Yeah. Good point, Transylvanian. I'm glad that we agree. A box. Haven't double checked it myself, but someone mentioned that all major escalations in the U.S. and the world happen with a Democrat in charge. So yeah, not surprising, Republicans are anti-war. What's so funny is that it's like I'm dead certain that Trump is running on an anti-war platform because like, this will get me elected. This will do it. I'll run the best anti-war campaign you've ever seen. Everyone will say, Donald, I didn't think you would be an anti-war guy. I'm an anti-war guy. I'm pro-business. You can't do business if you're at war, right? Like that's how he is. That's how he is. I actually think that is actually true. That he is anti-war because it's bad for business, specifically his business, right? Like if Donald Trump was in the arms manufacturing business, he'd be pro-war. But he's not. He's actually in real estate. So he said, what, they're going to blow up my real estate? No. I got to get a better Trump voice. My Trump voice is lacking. We're going to get 4 more years of that guy. I got to tell you, dude, if I'm doing this show and Donald Trump is the president, you're going to see a lot more clips of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is an entertaining guy. He's hilarious. Terrifying, but they're all terrifying. Fucking Sleepy Joe Biden is so fucking terrifying, dude. It is so scary that the guy at the very top of the chain right now is literally just like Sleepy Joe Biden, just like, I think that here in America we got to make sure that America stays the greatest country in the country, and America, It's like they say, God. You know the thing. You know the thing. That's scary. It's scary that this is the guy. Like, oh, okay. Like, at least Trump, like his thing is that he just rambles about how awesome he is. Oh man. I'm just interested in his economic view on the topic. Oh, my economic view on the topic? Actually, Transylvanian touched on something that I think is actually true. If you gave everybody money, it would just siphon back to the top, right? So it's not really a solution. But I am also of the opinion that like just giving money to people so that they could probably improve their lives is not a bad short-term solution. But all you're basically doing, if you, like, imagine it this way, because this is actually true. You're playing a game of Monopoly, right? And one person gets all the properties, right? That's how Monopoly goes. One person gets all the properties. Now, in the game of Monopoly proper, your piece gets knocked off the board, you're no longer playing, but we're in the game of life. So your piece keeps going around the board, right? Your piece keeps going around the board. It's just that, like, So if I were to add another layer onto the game of Monopoly to make it a little bit more accurate, your piece keeps going around the board, and every time you land on a space, the owner of that space would pay you a wage, right? Of course, the wage is very low, and the entire point of doing this is not to get into this mindset of like, oh, you'll be able to save up enough and then maybe get a property or something, because that's not going to happen. He's not selling the properties. The whole point would be to just be like, oh, I'm going to give you a wage for your work, and then the next time you go around, you're going to hit. What are you going to hit? You're going to hit one of my properties, and then you're going to pay me that wage. Just to reinforce in the mind of the player exactly how the game actually does work. Which is that after the capitalist round is resolved and the property goes under one person's hand, then the workers go around, and the way it works is that you land on a space, you get paid your wage, and then you land on a space and you pay it back. Right? Like you get your wage and you pay it. You get your wage and you pay it. And there's just this dynamic of constantly taking the money from the owner and then giving it back to the owner. And that was a bit of a divergence. But as you're going around the board, playing this game where no one has any property except the one guy, and he's got all the money, he's got all the wealth, he's got everything. And then if suddenly you guys all got together and said, hey, you've got to give us some of that money. And even if the guy gave you all of his money, well, what would happen? You would go around the board and you would land on spaces and you would give your money to that guy, and eventually he'd have all the money again. So it's no true solution. It's no true solution. That the actual solution is that the owners seize the means of production, right? The owners take control of the property, right? The owners take control of the property, or the workers take control of the property, and the idea that there is a final owner of all things should just be chased out of our consciousness. We just should become. We should see that as silly. Like, I wouldn't accept a king, right? Like, if a king showed up and was like, I am Lord Archibald the 43rd, connector to King Richard the 50th of this lineage, and you are all my servants by the decree of Queen Hufflepuff. I would just be like, shut the fuck up. I don't give a fuck. Like, fuck off. What are you talking about? Right? And unless that guy showed up with, like, guns and shit and was, like, blowing shit up, no one would take this guy seriously. And yet, for fucking some reason, we're supposed to take this idea that, like, I'm Bill Gates, and I bought a bunch of licenses and put them in a box, and now I own all the farmland. What? No. No, sweetie. No, you don't. Like, no, you don't. Like, that's so stupid. That's a stupid idea. And that's exactly what happened. Like, Bill Gates showed up. He took a lot of other people's work. His mommy and daddy got him connected to Congress people, right? They made, like, a really parasitical business model. And now they own all the fucking farmland in America. It's just like... Come again? Just, there are certain things that I just think should not be possible. And I think that's the lesson that we're learning as a people, I think, is just this idea that, like, there are just things that are bad ideas. Like, letting people murder one another is a bad idea, right? That's just a bad idea. It's just a bad idea to let somebody have $1 billion. Just shouldn't exist. Right? And that idea is becoming quite popular. You've got Bernie Sanders on Stephen Colbert saying that out loud in the public sector, so the public can hear it. Not in the public sector, but so the public can hear it. It's going to spread that idea around a lot more. And it's just going to come to the point where people are finally going to be like, yeah, fuck your nonsense. Like, what are you even talking about? Yeah, reparations shouldn't be conceived as a one-and-done deal, though. It's a continuous process of making a horrible historic grievance better. Transylvania. To ignore issues of race, sexual, and gender oppression would be self-sabotaging for a communist revolutionary. The way to gain allies is to show solidarity with their struggles. Yeah. Yeah, I got a fella in here. Hold on. To ignore issues of race, sexual, gender would be self-sabotaging. Yeah. Yeah, solidarity is the way. I just know that I'm not going to be the one who's the voice. I think is the best way to say it. How did the date go? It never happened, Marcus. That's life. I'm meeting up with a friend on not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday. I'm looking forward to that. That's gonna be nice. And also, I've got fucking roaches. I got a fucking exterminator coming in here on this Wednesday. That I'm looking forward to. That's fucking great. No, there's only about 10% of the speech was about directly the Ukraine war. He actually talked about LGBTQ issue and is going to ban it from Russia. Oh, says he's going to make the Orthodox Church the official state faith. He talks about he is done with the West. He's holding back the nuclear treaty because the West refused to let their agent inspect their arsenal. Woo, that is tough. That's tough shit, dude. That is tough shit. Like, it's pretty scary that LGBT is getting, like, it's getting so heavily politicized on the international stage like that. Like, that's pretty scary stuff, actually. Ugh. Doing everything the USA says, will that really protect us? No. Like, it's short-sighted thinking, for sure. Chief Dog. I know I've never seen you here before, Chief Dog, so you've just come in on a regular old normal YouTube day. Can I ask you about how did you find this channel? I'd like to know. Is YouTube actually sending me around? Speaking of, I got 18 concurrent viewers, 19 likes. You guys get a pass. You guys get a pass this time. Lucky bastards. So what do you mean by communism? Like the Chinese or Russian kind? Yeah, that's what we're talking about, bud. Like I am a communist. I take a historical material position on communism. I don't believe what the CIA tells us about communism. I don't believe what the State Department says about communism. I don't give a shit what you heard on CNN. I don't give a shit what you heard on Fox. I don't give a shit what you heard on the CBC. I care about what actually happened. I listen to academics. I pay attention to research. And I acknowledge the existence of state propagandists and major terrorist organizations like the CIA. That communism has been resoundingly successful every time it's tried. And just because the Americans have successfully sabotaged it or simply destroyed it doesn't mean it doesn't work. Like, in the case of the Russians, I think the Russian case is like everybody goes like, oh, communism collapsed. It's like the communist project of Russia turned an agrarian feudal country run by literal czars into an industrial superpower capable of defeating the Nazis, one of the most terrifying capitalist armies ever to be fielded, and they managed to do that in a single generation. Oh, and incidentally, also while being the first people into space. Like, this idea that communism failed, I have no idea what you're fucking talking about. Decolonization is a better term to use than reparations, in my opinion. Yet decolonization implies a permanent correction of historical injustices, not merely a one-time buyout. Yeah, that's a good point, Transylvanian. Transylvanian's got the talking points. I agree with Transylvanian. Eric, then he mostly talks about the Russian economy, where he's reintroducing some elements of the USSR that he worked while keeping a capitalist economy. Full-blown communism, here we go. He's going to do it. Democrats have a big demographic advantage, but if anything will manage to get Trump reelected, then it will be an anti-war platform, even if he is just an opportunist and completely dishonest about it. Yeah, I don't know, dude. Like, Trump didn't start any wars when he was in office. It's difficult. Like, he's certainly less hawkish. He's less hawkish than Biden, and by a lot. Like, the moment Biden got into office, he was like bombing the shit out of people. Like, the moment he got into office, he was just like bombing the shit out of everybody. Trump didn't start any new wars. That's what he keeps saying, right? I didn't start any new wars. Sure, he dropped a fuck ton of bombs on Afghanistan, right? He had some people assassinated. Yeah, that was pretty good. Like, I think that's really what he's attracted to, I gotta tell you. I I think he is mainly just attracted to making those types of decisions. Just being like, yeah, let's get him. Let's just get him, right? I think that's what he likes. It's like that feeling of like you're fired, but instead it's you're dead. Come on, Jack. Yep. I like the APSP take on reparations. Do them plus extended self-determination. Yeah, that's my line. I do not care if whiteness as a thing dies. I mean, I kind of do care. I think that the whole whiteness thing is stupid. Like, I wish that we would all just be like, oh, you have this color of skin and I have this color of skin. Isn't that nice? Like, I kind of do wish we could get to that. I understand why people don't want that. Like, it's because a lot of that is tied into people's culture. Like, we live in a moment when, like, being of a certain color indicates a certain type of culture as well to many people, I think. And so that's all tied up in it. I'm just like, I feel like I can still really like your culture without, like, the whole color issue being a thing. I feel like I'm, like, stepping all over the place with this one. This is a very messy point that I'm making, but I'm making it. He also talks about veterans, where they're going to take care of them, and he wants to hand a psychologist to every single soldier. But yes, most of his talk about the Russian economy and the plan that he has for it. Yeah. The mood in the U.S. is very much not pro-war at this time, from what I can tell. Yeah, outside of the CNN, MSNBC addicted liberal enclaves. Well, I mean, imagine living in a like you're living in a country with like these absolutely barbaric outcomes. What's one I saw just recently? Did I even put it in here? No, it's too barbaric. It was too ridiculous. Just like people, the healthcare situation that's going on for people right now is such that they are like, I believe the story was a fellow got a bill. It was in response to like Bernie Sanders being like, share your stories about the healthcare system. And the guy's like, I got a bill for $100,000 for the emergency services for my daughter the day we buried her because she couldn't afford the medicine to keep her alive. Like, that's a hard thing to hear. That's a hard existence to live. And then to see that very government that's actively maintaining that system, that is plunging you into debt while you bury your daughter because she couldn't afford the medicine to live, that very same government that's taking your taxes to do it, that very same government is sending $46 billion to Ukraine. Like, make it make sense. Like, make it make any sense at all. And so I think there's just a lot of the anti-war sentiment that's coming out. It's too absurd. It's too absurd for people. Like, we can afford that, but we can't afford this. Like, there just comes a point where I think people realize, like, we need to be isolated. Like, the United States needs to be isolated. Like, it really does. It needs a period of self-isolation. And it's going to happen one way or the other. Like, it's going to happen one way or the other. And it won't be, like, perfect isolation, obviously. There's always going to be mercenary groups. Like, we've given billions of dollars to sociopaths. Like, they are going to fund mercenary groups. Like, that's absolutely going to happen. If it's not already happening. Chief Dog says, I must say you're the only communist who makes a solid argument. I just saw one of my friends watching you, and when I said Russian or Chinese, I meant, like, economically. Yeah. Me too. Like, me too, dude. Like, our economy is stupid. It doesn't make any fucking sense at all. It will, and it does, regularly implode on itself. And when it implodes, what do? We bail out the people responsible for making it implode, and tell the victims to go get fucked. It's not an economy that makes any fucking sense. When similar collapses or similar things happen in China, they punish the people responsible for it, seize their assets and give it to the victims. Like, it's to and I don't just mean economically either. I think politically we could do. Like, this idea that somebody wins a beauty contest and then they get to start drawing up legislation for like a state is crazy. Like, what are you even fucking talking about? Literally, you get given $1 billion. Like, be like somebody like Michael Bloomberg, who spent $500 million on a failed presidential bid. But if he had won, he would have been just like the president. What are you fucking talking about? He would have like been the president. Military personnel would have come to him and said, "Hey, who should we murder?" And that's somebody who we should all be like, "Yeah, he won that beauty contest. He stood on the stage in front of all of us, and he did a beauty contest, and we all liked his answers the best, and so we all voted for him, and now he gets to drop nukes. That's how it works here. It's freedom. That's the freedom is what that is." Like, you know what other countries do? They let you vote for a guy, so there's a beauty contest, right? So you vote for a guy, and then that guy goes into a building, and they go, "Hey, welcome to the building, first-timer person who hasn't been here yet a day. Let us teach you about the concept of governing. We're going to take you and put you in a village of 100 people. See if you fuck it up. And then we're going to talk to those people and see if you fucked it up. And if you didn't, then we'll take you and put you in a town. And then maybe a city. Sorry, maybe a district of a city. Then maybe a city. Then maybe a province. Right? Over time, we're going to build you up. And then maybe, if you end up being astute politically and understand how to negotiate yourself inside of the structure of this place itself, maybe you could become the leader. That's possible. But the idea that you're just going to win a beauty pageant and then be king, get the fuck right out of here. Get the fuck right out of here with that dumbass shit. That's so fucking stupid. I can't even believe it. Trump almost started a war with Iran. That was never actually going to happen. They just assassinated that guy. That's what that was. Like, what was Iran going to do? Straight up, like, what was Iran actually going to do? Like, if Iran had taken all their forces and, like, done something crazy, America just would have been like, yeah, well, what are you going to do? Like, America's so fucked up. Come on, Jack. You ridicule the idea of giving aristocrats a bunch of property just because they come and ask for it, but that's unfortunately exactly what a lot of former socialist countries in Eastern Europe did. The governments of former socialist states like Romania literally just gave away national patrimony like castles and shit to the grandson of the former king. Yeah, so I'm not a post-communist. Yeah. I mean, but that's why I ridicule it. Like, it's such a stupid idea. Let's privatize everything. That'll work. That'll definitely work. Leon, good to see you, bud. I said it before, I'll say it again. If socialism sucks and collapses all on its own, America wouldn't spend billions on hybrid war against it. They would just point and laugh. Yeah. But they spend tens of billions to destroy socialism. Yeah, because they know. They know. They know exactly what it is. And, Chief Dog, I think that, like, I make solid arguments, but I've seen other people who do also make solid arguments. I think the reason why I'm more persuasive, if I had to be really honest, and maybe I shouldn't say this, but I like to be honest in all things, is that I've got a really cool voice. Like, that's really all it is. Like, if someone like Hakeem or Yugo Punk or Second Thought had my voice, I think people would be like, wow, this smooth voiced devil. And the truth is that I make very similar arguments to people like Richard Wolff. I make similar arguments to even people like Mark Blythe, right? Like, or Michael Hudson. But Michael Hudson's talking like this the whole time that he's talking. And he's like, you guys, we've got an imperialist threat that's on our border, and we've got to make sure that when we talk about parasitism in the system, right? So, it plays. Like, it completely plays. Like, I try to know my business, but at the end of the day, like, you know, there's a reason why most leaders of capitalist countries are dim-witted idiots. because they don't need to know what they're talking about. They just need to read the cue card nicely. That's all. He dropped more bombs in 2 years than Obama did in 8 years. Yeah, the line that he uses is he didn't start any new wars. That's what he says. Yeah, but Biden actually started a proxy war with the country with the most nuclear weapons on the planet. Yes, he did do that. That definitely did happen. It was so... I never believed that the Americans... that the Americans would have done it. Like, that's the thing about it, is that it's so crazy what they've done. Like, it's so insane what they've done that I just never believed that they would actually do it. I just always thought that they would step down from it, because it's so stupid and crazy. Like, it's too insane. Like, what are you even doing? What's the goal here? How is this a win for you? And so I didn't think they would do it. And I said so, and then it basically happened, like, right away, right after I said that it wouldn't happen. And it makes me feel better to know that people like Matt Taibbi also thought that it wouldn't happen. So it makes me feel better about myself. Cotton says, I would like to point out that one can be supportive of Russia despite their social policy. It means nothing to us Westerners who must take care of our own, and that includes our queer siblings. I think that's right. Yeah, I mean, that is true. Like, what are we going to do? Start a war with Russia over it? Leon, yeah, well, John, what you described isn't whiteness. Whiteness isn't about skin color. Whiteness is a coalition of power. Abolishing whiteness is like disbanding a political party. Yeah, that's right. I agree with you. CR Strifey, Bread Bunny, good to see you. I'll get to you guys right away. Let Russians short out their own shit. You won't find freedom and equality back in the Western war machine. No bomb ever liberated a queer person. That's right, Cotton. I agree. Marcus, too much self-importance wrapped up in pride within your race. Yeah, there is truth to that, dude. It's not our place to impose our social views on other cultures, or other countries, rather. Historically, the tendency towards more liberal cultural norms comes automatically with stability and prosperity, yeah? That extends to culture as well. CR Strifey, what do you think about these 15-minute cities? Genuine city-friendly plan to combat climate change, or the beginnings of controlling people's movements? I don't know. Probably a little of both, honestly. It really does pay to remember that, like, we're all stupid. Like, we're all just trying to make this work. And so I'm absolutely sure that the concept of the 15-minute city is very simple. It's just, you want to be 15 minutes walking distance away from amenities. That's it. You just want to make sure that you have, like, so a great example of this would be like an apartment building with a grocery store at the bottom of it. So that instead of needing to drive to get to a grocery store, there's a grocery store right there. And that things are designed with the idea that, it's only a 15-minute walk and you can get to all kinds of amenities. That's the concept of the 15-minute city. Let's be polite and say conspiratorial right has grabbed onto this idea, and it's not just the right. I should be clear. But it's definitely a conspiracy. Like it's like it's one of the more hysterical conspiracies that they're like they want to do these 15-minute cities so that they can keep us better controlled, so that they can track our movements better, and then if they need to, they can kettle us. Right? That kind of thinking. And I won't lie to you. I'm absolutely sure that there are police people and people who are interested in security that are looking at the concept of the 15-minute city and being like, oh, that would make, like, population control a lot easier. And the truth is that it would make population control a lot easier. Like, it would. That very much like the flat earther thing, very much like a lot of these things, it just comes down to the fact that there's no trust in the society. That's really where we're at. That the concept of a 15-minute city, if you lived in a society where you trusted your neighbor and you actually knew who your local representative was, maybe that local representative actually wasn't trying to preside over, 100,000 people, but instead just over, like, maybe 10,000 people. right? That there was a little bit better of a connection, all that kind of stuff. You would listen to something like the 15-minute city and be like, oh, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. I like that. 15-minute walk. I can get to any amenity. It's a big reason why I like living where I live right now. I'm a 15-minute walk away from amenities that matter to me, right? Grocery store over there. Got a beach, literally a beach right over there. Like, yes, please. Yes, please. I'm super, 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 super looking forward to the spring and then the summer. I'm going to go to that beach. I'm not going to not go to that beach. I'm going to that beach. And but if you live in like a kind of state of perpetual suspicion of your government and state apparatus, like, yeah, you're going to come up with this kind of stuff. And it's not completely illegitimate. Like, even though I'm ostensibly in favor of the concept of the 15-minute city, like, it would make policing a lot easier. Like, it would. It just would. So, at the end of the day, it just does come down to, like, we're having a cultural and spiritual moment as a people. We're having, like, a spiritual existential moment of, like, do we trust each other or not? And obviously the answer is no in the West. Like, pretty obviously. So that's what we need to focus on more than anything. Because any idea is bad. Like, any idea is the state trying to take you over and trying to get on you if you're in a place where that's happening. Right? And just conversely, where, ideas can be good if you live in a state of trust. And so how do we reclaim that trust? I mean, you guys know me. I don't think that that's going to happen. But, that is what we need to focus on. Yeah, we just need to stop attacking, sanctioning, impoverishing, destabilizing, and generally fucking with countries like Russia, Iran, etc. Yeah, like the United States needs to be isolated. That's all it is. The United States just needs to be isolated. And it is going to be isolated. Like, when China comes out and actually does say stuff like this, and, like, when China comes out and publishes a paper like this, like, this paper that came out of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the People's Republic of China was an indictment of the West and an indictment of America. I read this on the live stream and I was like, holy fuck, this is spitting facts. And the idea that China feels they can do this, that tells you something. It tells you that China is moving in a direction. Like when China comes out and says, hey, we should do a peace deal. Oh yeah, and Zelensky fired commander of joint forces. So there's that. I don't know how much it matters, but that China comes out with a peace deal, a peace idea for Ukraine, and when you've got Brazil also saying the same thing, it shows you a general picture that the United States is just getting isolated and is isolating itself. And the United States needs to be isolated for a while. Like, I really do believe that there's going to be a period of time where, like, maybe other countries will poke its head in on the U.S. and be like, hey, U.S., how you doing, right? And we'll be like, I'm fine! Ah! And then they'll be like, okay, cool. They'll just, like, back out of the room, right? And, like, some countries will, like, make just, like, hey, we got a bunch of grapes, America. You wanna buy some grapes? And America will be like, yeah, I love your grapes. Give me your grapes. I want grapes. And then they'll be like, okay, cool. See you later, America. Right? And like Colorado will go to war with California, and Texas will become like Greater Texas and start to absorb like Texas will start to absorb Louisiana. Right, Oklahoma. This will become like Greater Texas, right? Like there'll be an alliance of like Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, and Arizona to try to control the Colorado River. This will spark a war between like Nevada and California over here. Right, the First Nations people will just continue taking over. Where was it? Nebraska? Where did the First Nations people get all that? Was it South Dakota? No, come on, Ohio. It was one of the O's. Was it Oklahoma? It was Oklahoma. I'm dead sure of it. Come on, John. Oklahoma. Oklahoma, where the hell are you? Why am I struggling? There it is. Fucking Oklahoma. Yeah. This will become like First Nations land. There'll be a war of the First Nations people against Texas as they try to spread out and become Greater Texas. Right? All that shit will happen. The desert will continue to encroach and continue to spread in this direction. Washington will become a communist state. Right? There'll be communist leadership that takes over Seattle, and they'll do a revolution, and Washington will be there. And they'll have a big speech about how, like, it is not without notice that the state of Washington is the one that has declared its independence. Right? Well, the Ohio will just be declared like a dead zone because they keep blowing chemicals up in it. Right, fucking, just there'll be like an alliance of the we are the original 13 colonies, and we should come together and be real, true America. Right, and then the Washington will they'll rule this. It'll be like a real Taiwan situation where the ruling class of Taiwan claims all of China to be its rule. It'll be the same thing where like Washington will be like we're actually still the federal government, you know. We're still the federal government, you know. We're still in charge, you know. You got to listen to what we have to say. And everybody will be like, sure we do, bud. Florida will just be in the ocean, right? Like, nothing will fucking matter. And Florida, every time we look at Florida, it'll just be as Florida is now, just a lot wetter. You know? Like all that shit's going to be happening in the United States, and the entire rest of the world is going to be like, hey, who wants some bananas? Oh, I've got a little bit of oil here. If anybody needs any oil. Ah, you know what? I generated a little bit more power than I needed. Anybody need any power on the power grid that we all built together? And then eventually America will be like, hey, guys. And we'll be like, hey, America. And America will be like, can we trade with you guys? And we'll be like, I don't know, America. Can you trade with us? And we'll be like, I've been doing some thinking, you know, and we've been growing a lot of tobacco, and I got some tobacco if you want it. And somebody will be like, you know what, America? I'll take your tobacco. I'll be like, really? That'll be how it goes. It's gonna suck when the mercenary squads start to go around. Like the CIA death squads, that's gonna be the toughness. That's gonna be the stuff that Americans are really gonna struggle with. Like, when Americans do not want to believe the idea that, like, the CIA sending, like, death squads around these places. There's absolute, like, I think, where's the place where I think it's actually going to happen the most? It's going to be one of the southern states. It's going to be like Alabama. It's going to be like that, where, like, the CIA is just going to straight up just be like, yeah, whatever. Like, we're just going to sweep through here. If we find a black guy, we're just going to shoot him. Just welcome to fucking Alabama. Like, that kind of shit's going to happen. Like, the CIA is going to still operate. It's still going to be around. It's just going to be a rogue terrorist organization that nobody controls. Right? It's just going to exist on its own behalf. Santora, it's up for being so late to the party. Don't worry about it, dude. This is I'm having kind of a faffy one. It was a good one. We did a lot of Ukraine stuff. Talked pretty largely about Ukraine. Yeah. Then they will eventually develop their own genuine progressive movements, not CIA-funded AstroTurf cover revolution ops that cynically co-opt the progressive causes for imperialism. Absolutely. Red Bunny, hey John, some of my questions got missed earlier. Oh, yeah, hit me. I was asking stuff about the threat of nuclear war. Wanted to know what you thought about the likelihood. Also wanted to know if China nukes USA, is Canada pooch too? Look, the threat of nuclear war is real, okay? Like, it is. That like, John Mearsheimer always says it as cleanly as I can imagine it, which is that the Americans are saying, and I've even heard them say it as recently, just today, in the Center for Strategic and International Studies. I listened to this. And these people, who are supposed to be like a big think tank that we're all supposed to respect, are all talking about how awesome it'll be to defeat Russia. right? To actually defeat Russia and push Russia back into its own territory and all this kind of stuff. But John Mearsheimer points out that, like, what are you talking about? If we start to defeat Russia and start to push against their border, start pushing them back into their border, that's really going to highly incentivize them to use nuclear bombs. So the United States is in this really fucking weird position when it comes to this particular issue, which is that the more that they win, the more likely it is that Russia will try to salvage the situation with nukes, right? And so it's on the table. It's a real thing that can certainly happen. We shouldn't bullshit ourselves about it. And who are the people who are responsible for the beating heart of it, as always? God bless America. God bless America. And, dude, yeah, like, if the nukes start flying, we're all screwed, dude. Like, if the nukes start flying, we are all screwed. There was one thing, I wonder if I can find it really quickly. History of emissions GIF. Is there one that there was one that I really found once that I wish I had hung on to. That was really, really, maybe history of yearly. No, this isn't what I'm finding. But there was one that I saw that was really, really interesting because it was year by year. It showed you the emissions or the temperature, yearly temperature. Some of these are still pretty good, actually. But the thing that I was really, and the reason why I wanted to show you this one, or not, and this isn't the one I was thinking of, but the reason why I wanted to show you the one I was thinking of was that it showed you how there was a big spike when the nukes got dropped during World War II, right? And this might actually show it, right? That there's a big spike in global temperature, right? I think it's swinging around too fast. I mean, this kind of does it, doesn't it? Like, Jesus Christ. Like, look at that. That's where the line is. Isn't that nice? And that's of 2016. That's fun. There's a spike in temperature that happens when you drop a nuclear bomb, right? It reminds me of that scene from Deep Space Nine when Quark said they were dropping nuclear bombs in an enclosed atmosphere. I could have sold these guys anything. Well, now that spike in temperature that happened was happening when the temperature was here, you know? When the temperature was in like this reasonable kind of space, right? It was here. And then you had like this like spike up that happened, right? And then it kind of mitigated back down and normalized. Well, now we're here and beyond. And beyond. So if we start dropping nukes, temperature's going to spike. Temperature's going to spike right up. So it's not just that Canada will be pooched. We will all be pooched. If nukes start dropping, there are no laws. Like, and I mean that really genuinely. Like, if nuclear bombs start dropping, there's no leadership. We have no leaders. There are guns and there are not guns. That's it. And that's just the truth. Right? And you can hunker down and, like, do what the guns say, but they have no authority. Like, if what is resulting is nuclear bombs dropping, they have no authority. There's no such thing as authority. It doesn't exist. That you are exclusively and only doing what they say because they have guns and you do not. And that is the relationship between you and other people in your society. That is the long and the short of it. That is the hard, bad news to hear. That should a nuclear bomb go off, what are you talking about, laws? I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, I only respect the fact that you have a gun on your hip. That's it. Also wondering how likely the USA is to invade Canada for resources. We're too compliant. We're too compliant. They don't need to. Like, they don't need to. And there's no one in the political system that's going to change that. And I am more or less of the attitude that, this is the tough position that Canada finds itself in. That, like, if someone like me were to begin to ascend and, like, take to the parliament and all this kind of stuff, like, I would be assassinated. They would fucking get rid of me. They would fucking do all kinds of chicanery. And then if they had to, they would invade. Like, they're not gonna, and they wouldn't, like, invade the country in order to take territory. They would come to my house and they would blow it up. Like, they fucking know what's up. The U.S. poses the highest risk of starting a nuclear war at this point, since it's an empire in decline that many feel so cornered and desperate that it takes the rest of the world with it. Man, Transylvanian, I feel like I should just, like, as I'm talking, a little pop-up should come. It just should be your comments. Because you're just saying what I'm saying, but better tonight. I have to tell you, Transylvania, you should quit it. I'm kidding. I'm completely kidding. I don't need the competition, Transylvania. God damn it. You're, like, laying it out. Kizono? Don't know if I've ever seen you here before, Kizono. Good to see you. Hope you're here to be beautiful. I know, obviously, China wouldn't send nukes first, but if the USA does, they probably would in return. I mean, that's the idea of mutually assured destruction, right? Yeah, Russia's missile technology and AD systems are so advanced, they may come to the conclusion that they can survive a nuclear war with acceptable damage. Yeah. If I perceive their existence to be under threat, that the U.S. is unhinged enough to launch a first strike, Russia may see it as necessary to strike first and minimize the eventual damage. Yeah, dude, like, this is what I'm talking about. This whole conversation that you're having right here. I'm just like, yeah, if this plays out in this reality, there's no authority. Like, I don't need to follow laws. Like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't give a shit about your rank. I don't care that you're a cop. Like, I don't care that you're a lawyer or a judge, politician. I don't give a shit. None of that matters. It's completely irrelevant to me. Like, the only thing that matters is the damage you can do to my life. And you're obviously willing to drop nukes, so, like, I may occasionally comply because I fear violence. That's it. Like, that's the best you'll ever get out of a guy like me. Like, right now I follow laws because I see it as beneficial. But if you guys are going to drop nukes, then I don't care. It completely doesn't matter to me. Nor should it matter to anybody. Like, there is no such thing as authority. Do you know why the Communist Party of Russia supported the LGBTQ ban? Because it's become an icon of the West. That's why. That the rainbow and that kind of iconography, and you think about Disney films, right? Like, it's become like a big cultural push. It's become a big part of American identity, and something to rally against for America's enemies. I think it's just become detached from what it actually means and what it actually is. It's just become a political force. And in many ways, like, the LGBTQ movement is experiencing blowback, right? Because, like, turns out that if you're, like, all pro-gay and LGBTQ and, like, yay, hooray, it's good to be gay and everybody should be gay and here's your rainbow flag and all that kind of stuff. Oh, by the way, we're still going to do imperialism. Then your enemies are going to be like, oh, it's not okay to be gay. Right? Like, if you're going to paint a missile with a rainbow and then kill someone's kids with it, don't be too fucking shocked when they go, yeah, I guess it's not okay to be gay. Seems pretty straightforward to me. That's why being an imperialist is the problem. That's why these idpol people who ignore class and are pro-imperialists are going to experience pretty bad blowback. Because they're still psychopathic murderers. Marcus, Americans that believe that theory don't understand good governing and believe in absolute necessity to commute an hour in a traffic to an office job. Yeah, just unserious people. I mean, there is that too. Like, for fuck's sake, like, suburbs were a bad idea. Like, suburbs were a bad idea. Yeah, that statement is straight fire. Anyone who has not read that document that the Chinese MFA put out in U.S. hegemony needs to do so. Yeah, this document, did I put it away? Do I still have it out? I'm actually thinking I might read this again tomorrow. Like, I think I might actually start reading this. Like, there isn't a piece of this that's wasted. Like, this is, it's a very it's actually quite short. I actually seem to recall it being a lot longer than this. I think it's just because it's got so much weight to it. Like, there's so much. This is a meaningful document. And to see that it was the Chinese government that produced it is pretty impressive. Like, pretty impressive. And, like, I feel like there's lots of places around the world that are going to read a document like this and be like, yeah, we got to isolate the United States. Like, we got to stay away from the United States. I actually think that China is trying to woo Ukraine right now. That here, let's go. No, there. That China wants to have talks with. China wants to have talks with Zelensky, and apparently Zelensky is going to talk to China. You've got Saudi Arabia sending goods to Ukraine. You've got Brazil calling for peace, right? So you've got, like, basically the BRICS countries are starting to come together and start to kind of woo Ukraine a little bit. And I bet you the pitch from China and Saudi Arabia and a lot of these places is going to be like, why are you committing your country to never ending and perpetual war? We could make things nice for you. You could have a nice situation. You could like, the American international community is never going to adopt you. They're never going to do that. Why don't you join an organization that's actually going to offer you something and offer you something legitimate? And, like, we'll see. To me, it's the greatest hope for peace. That if Ukraine can be convinced that getting connected to China is better than staying connected to America, that would be the quickest way to find peace. Mega buildings surrounded by parks and connected by high-speed rail. Imagine malls stacking on top of each other and connected up like that. That would be cool. It will be interesting to see how China moves forward now that its peace suggestion has been rudely rejected by the West. This may be the justification they need to start helping Russia more actively. I don't think so. I mean, yes, you're not wrong, like, more actively, but not more actively the way that we would think more actively would be. China had to know that this was going to get rejected, right? That China is more aware of itself and is more aware of what's going on in international politics and is more aware of what's happening on the stage internationally than America is. And when it puts forward this sort of document, it's not just doing so for America's benefit. It's doing so for the benefit of everybody to see that they're doing it. Right? They want to make sure that everybody involved in it is seeing that they are saying, hey, we've got this path for peace. We are interested in peace. Hey, countries that might be skeptical about the intentions of China, here's China coming in to a tense situation that is happening between Russia and America, ostensibly, and saying, we would prefer the path of peace. And if we're saying that to these guys during this tense period, when we say it to you, maybe you'll take it a little bit more seriously and think that we're more credible as a people and as a country, right? And I think that China is genuine in what it's trying to accomplish in terms of peace. I think that it's using reason, which America doesn't like to do. I don't think that they are going to start, like, China doesn't want to directly get connected to... There's already been false stories spread around by the CIA that China is going to do that very thing. that China is astute enough to create layers of distance. Maybe a good example would be like Saudi Arabia just sold $400 million worth of oil goods to Ukraine. Okay. Who actually manufactured those goods? Was it Saudi Arabia, do you think? So China may have sold these goods to Saudi Arabia or created a deal where Saudi Arabia oil goes over to China, China manufactures it, Saudi Arabia finds a buyer, there's the buyer. Right? And I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying that that's the kind of thing that China would do. Because China wants to create a distance. It doesn't want to get directly involved. So how can it get involved without being directly involved? The way that it's always gotten involved. By being the manufacturer. Right? How did China build its wealth? How is it where it is now? By being the manufacturer. By being the person who did the thing. Who built the thing. Right? And I feel like you could have a similar situation with like India. Right? So India has some resources, gives it over to China. China manufactures something, gives it back to India. India sells it to Russia. There you go. Now India is the one. And the headline is India sells Russia, blah, blah, blah. But who manufactured it? Who actually made the thing? So that's how I think China will operate. I'll be very, very surprised if China does straight up be like, China and Russia versus the world, you know? Like, I think China's wise enough to try to keep a little bit more of a hands-off approach on these things. Out of curiosity, John, why did you stop inviting people to talk to you on your stream? I just didn't want to. No mystery, dude. I just didn't want to do it. I tried it, and I was just like, nah. Not what I want to do. Transylvania, the Chinese ambassador already asked the EU foreign policy chief, the racist who called the global south a jungle, why they are allowed to supply weapons to Ukraine, but China should not help Russia. Yeah, that's the kind of thing that China would surely do, right? Like, China's really good at like pointing out hypocrisy, and I love that China's become willing to do it on such a high level stage. You know? Like, just straight out just be like, so why don't we just start funding Russia? Like, why don't we just start giving weapons to Russia? Like, what's the deal there? Like, the United States is fighting such a losing, like, the fact that people would sit around and pretend like America's getting a win out of this, it's just absolutely stunning to me, right? Like, it's absolutely stunning to me that anybody would actually walk around saying that America got a win out of this. Like, they are ostensibly now at war with most of the rest of the world. And most of the rest of the world is if not at war, in conflict, certainly. And the entire rest of the world is starting to band together. And this event, this Ukraine event, has been like a catalyzing moment for the vast majority of the rest of the world. And now America is thinking about getting involved in Taiwan and starting to go after China directly. Dude, can I tell you what would actually happen if they did that? Can I tell you what would actually happen if it finally got to the point where China was forced to pull the trigger and actually do a full-scale invasion of Taiwan? Like, do you actually know what it would really actually look like? You are basically creating the circumstances where China, India, probably the Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, right? Iran, certainly Iran, probably like Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, certainly many African countries, certainly South America, and Russia would basically just go. All you're going to do is tighten that alliance. That's all you're going to achieve. You're going to kill some Chinese people, you're going to blow up some boats, and you're going to make sure that for the next 100 years, there's a unified front, a super friends alliance against the forces of evil that is the American empire. That's all you're going to achieve. Like, It's a bad fucking idea. It's a bad fucking idea. And the United States is just going to put itself in a position where it's going to start saying, hey guys, I need somebody to make my stuff. I have dollars. And people are going to go like, fuck your dollars. And that's like the end of it. Like, that's the fucking end of it. Like, you cannot go around the world making enemies like this. You just can't. You just fucking can't. Like, you're never going to you're never going to last. Like, what's so like if I walked around my life acting the way that America acts, like, I would just alienate everybody around me all the time. And like, what really kills me is, and we all do this. We all make a mistake. We all say something stupid or act in a stupid way. Well, the best thing to do is apologize. To acknowledge that you did it and do what you can. And what you'll find most of the time is that the best way to acknowledge that you are actually sorry is to just stop involving yourself. Just get out of the fucking way of it. And like, America just cannot believe that the world will operate without it. It just can't believe it. That we're going to spread liberal democracy. And if you ain't a liberal democracy, then you're no country at all. You're sure we went in there and murdered a million of your citizens, but you're better off for it. You're better off for it. It's just like when we eradicated the First Nations people. They were all just living in mud huts anyway. Like, Jesus. By the way, John, Rainer Shea just posted another great article about a lot of the stuff you just talked about today. Fantastic. I'm sure I'll take a look at it. Watch what happens. He's gonna start using my shit. I'm gonna say shit, and he's gonna start using my shit, and then I'm gonna read his shit, and then I'll use his shit, and then we'll create like a little vortex, a little communist vortex that will, from which Lenin will be reborn. How do you like that idea? You'll watch it happen on this channel. Lenin will be reincarnated. Marcus says the war ends with a CIA coup in Russia, and pro-American policy puppet is installed for the next 20 years until the populace outs him like every other country in the world. Yeah, I don't think so. Like, Russia's... Like, the CIA has not really done a successful coup in, like, Venezuela. Didn't really do a successful coup in Venezuela. Hasn't really been able to do a successful coup in, like, Cuba. You know? Struggles to do successful coups in like, Africa. There were 5 coup attempts. Only 2 of them were successful throughout Africa last year. You know? Like, the whole idea, like, that they had the Peru coup, but the Bolivia coup didn't take. That went back the other way. So, like, countries are more aware of it than ever before. They're more aware of the CIA and how they operate. And the CIA is, like, pretty, like, annoying. Like, they're just like most Americans. They're arrogant and stupid, right? Like, they're trying to be clandestine and all that, but you listen to some of the stories that come out of the CIA, and it really is just like, to me, the only reason why the CIA is ever successful is just because they're so overly bloated in terms of their budget that they can try. So they can just keep trying. And, you know, it doesn't matter if you suck at hitting a baseball. If you swing 1,000 times, you're going to hit a couple, you know? And Russia, I just think, is like, they're pretty well funded. They've got serious security. Like, they're not letting the CIA foment some kind of coup. And you know that that Russia is like, if you try to do a protest right now in Russia, you just get swept up. Like, and of course Westerners will talk about that as if it's like, oh, that's a crackdown, it's authoritarian. It's like, what are you talking about? We know what color revolutions are, dude. Like, we know what a color revolution is. You don't just get to walk your CIA cronies in here and hold up some signs being like, I am against the war, this is not a coup, and have us be like, oh, I guess those are just citizens. Yeah, regular citizens protesting for sure. Like, Come on, man. Like, we know what's up. So, with all of that in place, I'm really just like, I would believe an assassination narrative before I believed a coup. That if you were to tell me that they assassinated Putin, I'd be like, okay, but I don't think that would matter. I actually think that would be probably a mistake from the American side, but Americans are, if anything, they're the best at making mistakes. Assassinating Putin, it would mean that the guy that followed him up would be even more vigilant. Like, he would be even more pro-Russia. He would be even more, we're in this war. Like, it'd be even more of that. It'd be pretty unlikely that they would assassinate Putin, and then the next guy would be like, whoa, we better step down. Like, probably not. Like, Putin's probably the moderate in all of this. That's something that I really do think about him, and I do believe it, is that he is actually the moderate. That there's definitely a guy in his parliament, for sure, who is just like, we should have gone in there and just dropped all the fucking bombs and just leveled Kiev. That's what we should have done. We should have just turned it to fucking rubble, taken it over from the start, this fucking weak-ass Putin. And I bet you there's a bunch of people around him being like, that's fucking right, bud. That's fucking right. So you assassinate Putin, give that guy a shot? Okay. Not that the American government would ever listen to what I had to say and take it seriously. I'm sure that there's some FBI guy or some CIA guy listening and being like, God damn, that is actually a really good point. I should write that down. Like, the Americans don't think. They don't care to think. They worship stupidity above all. This little conference right here that I watched, this war in Ukraine on Year 1, Center for Strategic International Studies, this whole conversation convinced me that Americans love stupidity. They love being stupid, dude. They love it. They're just all about it. They love thinking stupidly. They love being stupid. They're so happy and pleased with how stupid they are. Content says, Christ above, I'm hearing SNAP benefits are getting reduced in this inflation. Yeah, it is social murder, but that's exactly what it is. Is it? I don't think did Stalin come up with the concept of social murder? I don't think so. I think he probably used the phrase. Who came up with the concept of social murder? Engels. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that's deep. That's even deeper. Holy shit. The class which at present holds social and political control places hundreds of proletarians in such a position that they inevitably meet a too early and an unnatural death. Social murder. Human beings don't need an asteroid. They'll do it themselves. Yeah. Yeah. Reducing SNAP. Yeah. It's cruel and petty. Yeah. Yeah. No. I hate it when it jumps down like that. That annoys me so much. We got a chatty chat today. There's nothing left if they're dropped. Many nukes target infrastructure, not civilian centers. Nothing will be livable. Yeah. Russia is in a better place in terms of surviving the initial strikes, but the environmental issues will likely kill us all. Yeah, dude. Like, this whole, like, how survivable would it be? I'm going to tell you guys, like, in a post, like, nuclear war kind of thing, you wouldn't want to be alive. Like, it's no kind of life. Like, I just don't... You think the suicide rate's bad now. Like... To be fair, if there was a temperature spike around 1945, it may have been more because of the enormous additional emissions caused by all of the fuel consumption of World War II. Yeah, that's not a bad point, actually. That is a fair point. I just seem to remember seeing something on the graph that I was talking about where it was like, no, that's nukes. Like, that's nukes. Anyway. I'll cede the point to you. I think that's a fairly... I think that is actually probably more accurate. And WWE fuel consumption will be worse. Oh yeah, brother, we're gonna drop the nukes and have a war. It'll be raw. Yeah, I know you meant World War III, bud. Don't worry about it. I'm just fucking with you, Transylvania. You're just having a hot night, man. I don't know what to tell you. Like, you're on fucking fire tonight. If Toronto doesn't get turned into glass and only the U.S., I'm immediately flee northward. Yeah, I think you're not alone in that one. I already have friends that are talking about buying land in the north. They're just like, fuck this. Let's go homesteading. What are we doing here? Me, Transylvanian, Anemone, and myself would be a pretty decent podcast. Liga D Canada will most certainly be wiped as thoroughly as the U.S. I mean, John included, not me twice, yeah. Hey, I'm down for a commune. Let's go. Like, maybe let's all buy 500 acres in the north and start growing crops and build like a little shelter there, right? And have like a little podcast. We'll have like a little commune. Cotton, can I make the coffee? I mean, sure. Marcus, you're absolutely right. This is the document from the People's Ministry of China. Bibbidi, bobbidi. It's a powerful document. Ukraine doesn't have to be completely destroyed. They can still come to their senses, get rid of their Nazis and their U.S. puppets, and have a decent future. It is possible, right? China and Brazil reaching out, putting peace proposals on the table is a great diplomatic victory. The contrast with the warmongering West is very stark. Yeah. What am I... In a sense, China and India are only reclaiming their historical roles. Yet they were the world's manufacturing capitals for thousands of years before European imperialism came and ruined them, for sure. Yeah, one of China's greatest strengths in the tech industry is their loose adherence to intellectual property, and that's a lingering effect of communism in their society. Ugh. Well, I mean, the concept of intellectual property is so fucking annoying, dude. Like, in my view, that very concept is a big reason why why our culture has stagnated so badly. Because if you aren't able to use what's going on in the culture against itself without fear of financial reprisal, then you kind of get stuck, right? Like you can't really, like, Disney owns everything. And so if you want to do like a parody or some kind of thing and get away with it without fearing some kind of reprisal, then you need permission, basically. And there are some who can get away with it because they're big enough. Like, I think South Park is a good example of this. The South Park's big enough that they can get away with it. But it's like incidentally, I want to bring up that South Park is staying strong. I can't believe it. I thought by now that they would have waned, but like the new season of South Park is actually really fucking good. They've got a great episode where they take the piss out of Prince Harry and his wife. How they go on like a privacy tour and they're all like talking about how they want people to leave them alone, but they're like on a tour about it. And my favorite part is they go onto a talk show and we're here to discuss Prince Harry's new book. Where? It's like the same book that he's got on right now, except it says "wah" on the bottom. Yeah, Lenin's gonna come back to life like that Simpsons meme. Abso-fucking-lutely, dude. The Kazakhstan and Belarus coup attempts failed spectacularly, yet Turkey also survived a coup attempt. The coups in Pakistan and Peru have only managed to create a massive, very angry resistance movement. Yeah, I don't think the Peru coup is going to stick. Like, they're going to lose that coup pretty fast. An assassination martyrs Putin, a coup by funneling money into an influential oligarch's pocket to blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I don't know, though. Like, who wants to do this job right now, right? Oh, don't forget Patreon. Absolutely, bud. Absolutely. I'll do that right away. I'm gonna call it. We're 20 minutes over. Always remember, guys, each and every one of you is a quantum being, walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hopes you'll never realize it. You'll just stay the good little commodity they need you to be. Rebel. Revolt. Repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.